So he's doing that. He's gonna do.
Is that undergrad or law school? Perfect.
So I like that. Yeah, that's. Yeah. Good. Wow.
Check.
You see yours there?
Boys, can you give me a check?
Check, check, check. 10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to table up there, boys?
No, I'm good.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Joe Miller with MRDA. An industry like
Yes.
Do you have all the shots up, Dan? Do
What was that?
you have all the shots up?
All the shots, yeah.
Jane, will you just come sit here?
Your shoe is coming inside.
Thank you. It's tough for me to get organized, you know.
That's your A shot.
Awesome.
That's your ISO.
Okay.
ISO on guess.
Good. Should we angle that Fluence Forum thing a little?
I think so, yeah, probably.
Just like,
Just come out from the end.
yeah, from the wall.
Corner, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
I should have listened to my gut, man. That's what I wanted to do. Wow. Gotta really be, yeah.
I was just looking at the shot.
No, I know, but now we gotta pull that top.
Oh,
Looks shitty.
this is why Paul's here.
This whole thing, I think we need a better.
Frame or a better stretch. There you go. They won't be able to see that bottom corner. Is that better, Dan?
That is great.
Awesome.
I like it a lot. I'm just gonna tap on then. Okay, so we'll go. You already got his mic.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm about 15 seconds behind, so I'm listening to air, so.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
Hit that Celsius. This you have to do it. Yeah, and you can use.
Yep. That one's a little crackly.
This one?
That one was a little crackly.
Okay. Like if I'm doing, all right, if I'm wearing it, if I'm up here and I'm answering a question, Yeah, hi, my name is Josh. I'm moving my hands. I may be moving the wire. Are we crackly?
Okay, you sound good now.
Okay.
I would have just disconnected for a second.
Yeah, it could have just been the way I set it down.
All right, I think that is ready. Sweet.
But it's like at this point, we get, after I got started working. Oh, okay. I can do like 6 hours. Okay. Oh, okay. Jane or Briggs, we can just call my phone. Can you figure out how to make it just vibrate versus just go straight to voicemail? No, that goes straight to voicemail.
Yeah. You don't want to go through this.
No, because then I have no idea at all. It doesn't show missed calls.
So then just go to right.
I'll do not disturb while I want to do that. No, I can't figure out how to do it. No, it's not as easy. It's not like the switch like before.
You have the super special.
It's the new one.
Gold version.
Well, it's orange. So you go there and then silent, but it goes straight to voicemail. It's no longer like, I know, it's really annoying. The real problem is I forget to turn it back on. And then I'm like, nobody called me.
Right.
And then people are like, I'm trying to get a hold, I'll get a text. Can you call me?
Look at your
Yeah,
volume settings real
I
quick.
just did.
Okay.
That's what I was trying with Briggs. So it's fine. Another challenge for another day.
If you had an Android, it would be that easy.
If I had an Android, my life would be hell.
It would be.
Just ask Briggs.
You have the best
It's awful.
ever.
Androids are awful.
Best in the game.
Androids.
Yes. Team Android. Kids use.
I don't have an update every how many months, and then I go, Kirsten's phone.
Yeah.
The updates
Yeah.
they do are actually pretty good.
I don't have to. You don't. Neither of us have to say, "Hey, young person, come fix my phone for me."
I didn't nobody needed to fix my phone. I just had him call me. That's all I had.
Should we get the first 4 wired up?
Yeah. Hey, PJ. Good to see you. Tim, good morning. Thank you guys so much for all your work on this.
Zach,
So.
Pete, and
Hey, Pete.
TJ, we're gonna get
How
wired
are you?
up with
Good to
those
see you.
people here.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for doing
New
this.
Year treating you okay?
Yeah, it started a little.
It's been
We're right out of the
it's
gates.
been
There
a
was
roller
no
coaster.
break.
I know.
I took the week off of the newsletters from
Yeah.
Christmas to New Year's
Yeah.
that I always do.
Yeah. Then you
I was like sitting there all recharged,
Yeah.
and then on that Sunday, I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna happen." It just kind of picked up, and then I woke up that Monday after like not being able to sleep Sunday night, and I'm like, you just fucking rested for 10 days,
Yeah, it's
and
been nonstop.
and now,
Yeah.
and then that Wednesday, and
I know it's been nonstop. I mean,
I am
everybody
going to-
feels overwhelmed and
I'm supposed to go to Phoenix next Wednesday. I'm gonna have a client down there, and so I just booked it for this Friday, and I'm just gonna work from there. I saw the temperatures, and I'm like,
go. Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
I
You can write a
I can do
newsletter
this
from
app.
anywhere.
Yeah, I can.
Exactly. You can call
Exactly.
into CCO from anywhere.
Zach sounds like he'll be in his chair. Okay. So go ahead and toss that in your pocket for me, or wherever it's those.
I know that first panel without coffee right next to you is not fun.
No. we want them to take name tags off while we're on camera. Can I have you guys just take your name tags off while we're on camera? Yep.
This access cord you have to plug in.
I can't believe you're lying for the PA this week.
I can. I played last night.
Go ahead, toss that in the middle.
I'm back, although I forgot my brace last night, so I'm feeling a little today, but nothing like it was.
Yeah. Yes.
But we played a mega,
Mhm.
and like when I work all day, I'm just not as sharp, and then my eyes, like I caught the lights like twice, and they would not readjust. Like I had to pull myself with like 15 minutes left. I'm like, I can't. I'm like, I can return a serve,
Yeah.
And then this
But,
access
like-
cord, I'll fix
like,
that. Leave
I had
this.
no depth perception at all. The lights in there are awful.
They are weird. But I'm finding it, I don't know if this is just age or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't see a ball in those type of lights in the fluorescence from here to about here. I completely.
Well, like yesterday, like I had one where I did this, like it was coming, I did this, and I caught the light there,
Yeah.
and then I went here, and I'm like, and I missed it. And my partner looks at me and goes, "You had it the whole way," and I'm like, from the bright to the whatever, my eye didn't adjust fast enough. So
I'm helping a professional named Allie Phillips.
yeah,
She's become a friend of mine.
yeah.
She was too old to say, because lighting just, so it's not just us. She's
No.
23 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And then I changed my mind.
I'm guessing there is or there will be some sort of tinted
there has to be.
glasses
Well, like you
that's
said,
both
like that,
protection.
there's orange.
Yeah,
I wonder if that would help.
Yeah.
You are wearing your glasses when you play, right?
no contact.
You need to be wearing some sort of protection.
I had my
Yeah.
first close call a couple weeks ago
Well, I had a concussion because of pickleball. So if I want to,
from the ball.
I took a ball right off the temple. It's like at Mega, point kitchen to kitchen.
As always.
And then you know
Always
Charlie Rusuli was blinded in eye for like 3 days
Yeah,
after taking the set.
yeah.
Be smart, sir. You're too important not to have all of your
Vision. I already have enough eye problems.
right. And mind you, I'm susceptible to concussions. I was number 10 for me, so I'm a little.
Oh
easier
yeah,
to
you
get
should.
that.
Yeah.
Now
Well, I haven't had one in a long time. I fell 2 weeks ago on the ice,
Oh, on the ice, not like,
and I fell back, and
Okay, if you can just take all this
I
excess cord.
I don't know if it was intentional, but I swung my briefcase
Clean up the top.
to my back,
good.
and then I caught I didn't hit my head.
Yeah.
Up, let's go.
What are we waiting on?
Do you guys open the room?
Dan,
Panelists?
can you
Yes.
just put that back there? Just back by you.
I don't mean to make you the most,
That's me.
I never really like these high chairs. Look as awkward as possible.
Dennis, good morning.
Again?
Ready for the punishment.
So guys, I'm gonna kind of preview the topic for a few minutes, and then I'll introduce the panel. So.
Good.
Every week.
Good morning and welcome to the latest Fluence Forum. I am Blois Olson. Fluence Forum this month is the state of energy in Minnesota. As you know, we track industries and sectors as an agency and advisory firm, and energy has emerged over the last 9 to 10 months between changes in federal regulations to consumer demand to industrial demand to be something, a topic that consumers and business are paying much more attention to. Just to kind of set the stage today, we'll have a series of panels with the idea of saying, where are we today? What do we need to do for the future? And then we'll wrap with a couple leading lawmakers and legislators talking about where we are at policy as we get ready for a legislative session and we are in an election year. I want to thank our sponsors, Xcel Energy, SEAM, Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, Great River Energy, and the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. Just to think about energy as a topic amongst consumers and voters, the top policy issues for Americans as of this month are healthcare, the economy, immigration, and then energy policy. Yes, energy policy is now a top 5 issue on voters' minds. And so candidates, companies, consumers are going to continue to talk about energy. And as I lay this out and we think about it, we have very different views on energy and energy policy between generations. Older Americans want more traditional exploration. Younger Americans want more conservation. But the consensus is that we have to find a balance between industrial demand that's current, future industrial demand, and consumer prices. As we look at Minnesota as a leading state when it comes to conservation and clean energy, we must begin to ask the question, what more do we need to do to build capacity to be competitive in the future? And when we think about being competitive in the future, it's not just about prices, but it's about making sure that our prices, which have been traditionally low for our industrial users and consumers, remain low. And what does that mean for transmission? What does that mean for consumers? And in the patchwork and system that is Minnesota, we have to look at some of the mandates and regulations that we've adopted. Are they still possible? Do they need to be adjusted? And how is that going to impact ultimately the price and competitiveness of the state? So as we start this first panel, I want to again thank our sponsors, Xcel Energy, SEAM, Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, Great River Energy, and the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. Our first panel is designed to really start to lay out the topic that we're going to have a couple hours here to discuss. What is the state of energy in Minnesota? And joining me this morning are Zach Grzycki, Director of Resource Planning at Great River Energy, Pete Wyckoff, Deputy Commissioner of Energy Resources from the Minnesota Department of Commerce, and PJ Martin, Vice President of Integrated Planning at Xcel Energy. Gentlemen, I just want to state, as you guys kind of open this, where would you put the state of energy in Minnesota today? Zach, I'm going to start with you. Okay, we're going to pause. Okay. To our Zoom viewers, just one sec here. We're making sure all the tech is working so you have a great view and great vision. And all the audio works?
Audio is going right
now. Okay. The audience is getting audio though? Okay, well we can continue with audio until you guys figure out the video. Zach, as I stated, I'm going to start with you. What is the state of energy in Minnesota today when you think about capacity, infrastructure, and what we need for the future?
Sure. Well, thanks, Blois. It's a really exciting time. You talked right? Energy is at the forefront now, which is exciting. We've for a long time been in what I would say is more of an esoteric industry that not a whole lot of people understand or appreciate. Now it's getting a lot of headlines, both state, locally, nationally, and internationally. It's exciting. And, what we've worked on for a long time, reliability, affordability, sustainability, these are things that are beginning to be discussed a lot more in the public sphere. And in Minnesota specifically, GRE, we are a generation transmission cooperative. We have 26 member owners. We represent a huge amount of the geographic footprint of the state, and we have a very diverse membership. When you have 26 members, all of whom are represented on your board and are making decisions in the best interest of the group, you have a lot of different viewpoints. And so, we're at a time in the industry now where there are a lot of different paths that we're looking at going down. In the state specifically, we have very progressive climate goals that obligate us to meet decarbonization standards in 2030, 35, and 40. We've got energy and environmental technology standards, a lot of constructs in which we have to work. And we're also a part of a larger electrical market, MISO. And that electrical market obligates utilities to meet reliability metrics and criteria. A lot of utilities around the country that aren't members of organized markets have to set their own reliability criteria, their resource adequacy standards, planning reserve margins. We work with MISO on those. And so when we think about reliability, we are providing for our members capacity assets that provide credit and reliability characteristics to the market, as well as energy resources that hedge our members' exposure to market prices. So it's an exciting time. It's a great state to be doing business in. I wake up in the morning and learn something new every day. So things are moving very quickly. I'm sure we're going to get into things like data centers and other hot topics. But, at the forefront of our mind every day for us is our members and reliability and affordability and complying with everything we have to do in the state.
PJ, Excel operates in many states. Compared to other states, how's Minnesota look right now?
Sure, good question. Well, thanks again for having us. Yeah, in the upper Midwest for our NSP system, I would say that we are pretty well positioned right now. Just want to echo some of Zach's comments. I think it is an exciting time in our industry. We had flat load growth for a number of years, decades, and now we're seeing some amazing growth potential in front of us. So a lot of opportunity there. We're very well positioned on our northern system, I would say more so than in our Colorado and Southwest Public Service system areas. I think that is representative of some of the proactive planning we've done in Minnesota, working with stakeholders, working with our regulators. We've issued a number of requests for proposals in the last number of years. We're transitioning out of our coal fleet. We have plans to retire our entire coal fleet by 2030. And we've been proactively looking for generation resources to help replace that energy and capacity. Like I said, we've run many number of RFPs. We're adding thousands of megawatts of wind, solar, battery storage, natural gas-fired resources, so a good diverse mix of portfolio options. We feel like we have a good, robust portfolio. We do have some excess capacity the next few years, which is allowing us to have discussions with data centers and look at some growth on that front. Whereas in some of the other jurisdictions, we're a little bit tighter on the capacity front. We don't have as much excess capacity, so not as much opportunity with data centers, or we're going to have to figure out some quick solutions to add transmission and generation capacity to enable that. So again, I would say that we're probably better positioned in Minnesota from an energy and capacity standpoint in terms of where our generation portfolio sits right now. And then just touching on affordability really quickly, I think that's another key for us as well. Want to make sure if we're serving some of the data center customers that we have large load tariffs and other things that are isolating other customers and ensuring that we're not socializing any of those costs that they're driving on the system. If you look at some of our investor relations presentations, there's some graphics in there that I really love, talking about residential customer share of wallet and how we rank in terms of the 50 states. I think Colorado's number one in terms of share of wallet, like the cheapest from a share of wallet perspective. I think Minnesota's number 5 in that presentation. So all of our NSP states, from an affordability standpoint, we feel like we're very well positioned. that allows us to electrify customers, add more data centers at competitive costs, competitive rates, and really look forward to the economic development activity that could spur for the region.
Thanks, PJ. The Deputy Commissioner Wyckoff, as you think of today, and then obviously the department has to think about into the future, some excess capacity now, but what do we need to look at in the 5 to 10 year range to make sure that we maintain this, competitive stance?
So I think one thing that your listeners need to understand from the get-go is that for particularly our regulated utilities, the for-profit utilities that we have that are in exchange for that monopoly they have, given oversight by the department and the PUC, we have a robust planning process, and GRE, even though it doesn't need to, participates in that as well, where we make sure first and foremost that we're going to have a reliable system going forward. When we do IRPs, we first and foremost say, what are we going to be able to do on the toughest days on the system? Are we ready for those? And we built enough local generation, honestly, to cover almost all of that. Unlike many other states, we have a planning process that results in us being able to generate almost all the electricity we need. And in a tough day in the system, we tend to be exporting and making money because other states don't plan quite like the way we do. So I feel good about that. We are in the midst of a transition from what has become very expensive way to generate electricity, which is to take buried solar energy from the Carboniferous, dig it up someplace that's not Minnesota, bring it here, make big piles of it, burn it, turn it extremely inefficiently into electricity. We found we're living in a time where it's become cheaper. Just look at the world, look at China, not just Minnesota, to say, let's get our energy from sources that are now and sources that are free in terms of the fuel costs. We are making a rapid transition from where the workhorse of our electricity system was coal. It was dirty. It's now too expensive. To where the workhorse of our system, the base, is going to be wind and solar. Again, we're making it here. We're not importing it. These guys are installing it, not because they're good people that care about the planet, though I'm sure they are personally. They're installing it because that's where the economic forces have said, let's go that direction. So it's an exciting time with that transition. But as you said, we've been doing the transition thus far with very minimal load growth, where load growth was being, increasing demand was basically being taken care of by increasing efficiency. I think we should take with a grain of salt the more extreme rising demand scenarios. There's a lot of people with a lot of weird motivations who are pushing those and say the track record is efficiency gets better a lot faster than we ever give it credit for. So I'm not a believer in the more extreme demand growth scenarios that people are throwing out there, but there will be demand growth. And I think we have a system that is designed to meet it. We plan for it, but it's going to be fast. And the system and the way these industries have operated don't do fast all that well. So we'll be strained, but we'll get through it, and we are well positioned for the transition that's coming in terms of load growth.
PJ, Commissioner brings up a good thing, is that this is not a sector that can move that fast when it comes to building demand. How far out do you look when you think about some of the renewable requirements that are out there and the demand? How do you balance that? And are there things that consumers and businesses need to be aware of as they think about building here in Minnesota for capacity?
Sure. So a lot of our models go out 30 years, but typically for our Minnesota Integrated Resource Plans, those go out 15 years. In terms of what is actionable, given development timelines like you mentioned, and actually like what it takes to go through a regulatory process, issue an RFP, negotiate a contract, add a resource, allow it to get constructed and built, you're probably looking at least 4, probably 5 years out. That has created some challenges in, like I said, the jurisdictions where we don't have excess capacity, because you have data center customers coming to you saying that they want to energize in 18 to 24 months, and that just doesn't work with the traditional development timeline. So you have to already have generation resources in the pipeline to be able to serve them. In the PJM market, for example, there's been a lot of focus and discussion there. That's the market out to the east, on data centers and some requirements there to do kind of an emergency auction. A lot of the governors in that region have gotten together. So like that's one potential approach, is expediting procurements. And I think that's something that, certainly we could consider in this region if we needed to. Like I said, fortunately, right now we have excess capacity. We're not in that position, but definitely thoughtful planning and trying to make sure that we have good visibility into what customers we think are coming. You can never totally predict. There may be a hyperscaler that comes and wants a quick development timeline, but we're talking to most of them, trying to get a better understanding of who needs what when, how we can be proactive in that planning, how we can get to the point where we're confident that that load's going to show up, and then include it in our load forecast and make sure that we're procuring the resources for it in a timely manner. But that is one thing that I would stress for regulators and folks at the legislature, is the more flexibility that they can give us and the more we can think about timelines and trying to expedite things, working with our regulators to expedite some of our regulatory processes. I think that would be great. Permitting is another issue consistently, getting projects permitted and going through all kind of the red tape that is sometimes required to get steel in the ground is another front that I think could use some focus. And if there's any efficiencies that can be gained, we would definitely support it.
Deputy Commissioner Wyckoff, you and I have been on a panel or two, and permitting always comes up. I know there's been changes and efforts. How are we doing on expediting? Do we need to do a better job? And as you think of this from the current administration, you're going to likely have a new governor, a different administration. How does the department plan to make sure that the next administration is also ready for energy policy in Minnesota?
So to the first part of your question, Minnesota in 2024 passed a permitting reform bill that applies just to energy infrastructure. It did not go into effect until mid-2025, so it's still just rolling out. And the keys to that are two. One is just speeding up without losing the rigorousness of the rigor of the process. Some of the things we do, steps we do, make them shorter, make things that had happened sequentially happen concurrently. So those get you some gains in terms of reducing permitting time. The other thing that's important is taking projects where there are tracks. This is big and complicated, it will take longer. This is less complicated, it will take a shorter time. Moving more projects into, we know how to do that, and that's the biggest way that this new system is going to be important. There are just more and more things that are going to be on an expedited, shorter permitting pathway. And I think that's going to make a big difference to, the year that the Walz administration has left, but more importantly, going forward to whoever the next governor is. I think we have that bill in place, and that is very helpful.
Zach, Great River has a different footprint. You serve a different type of customer. What do you see as the future demands of your customers to make sure your member co-ops are ready to be, prepared for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are a little bit different, but we're largely the same, right? GRE is the second biggest utility in the state behind XL. We're one of the top 5 biggest G&Ts in the country. We don't directly serve load, but our members do. GRE is a cooperative. We're historically more residential in our footprint. So our load curve looks a lot different than a Minnesota Power, for example, which is predominantly industrial. Our members want a lot of the same things that XL's ratepayers want. We are all Minnesotans. We're all electricity consumers. People care about the same things. We speak with our membership, with our member boards, member consumers all the time. We hear concerns over reliability and affordability. I would say in the last 5 years, we have done a good job at planning for the future and transitioning our generation portfolio to what we need to be in the state of Minnesota. We've sold one large coal unit. We've retired another coal unit. We have converted our final coal unit to a combined heat and power gas and coal cogen facility. And, along with that, we've brought on 1,000+ megawatts of wind, and we've got another 1,000 megawatts in the pipeline being developed right now that'll be commercially operational by 2029. just 2 weeks ago, the Public Service Commission North Dakota approved one of the largest battery storage projects in MISO, and that's a GRE asset. So that'll be commercially operational end of this year. So there's a lot of things that are exciting. You know, all of the discussions that we have with our members are focusing on cost. When we build our generation portfolio, much like any utility, we're building a hedge. We buy all load out of the MISO market and we sell all of our generation into the market. So when we procure a wind contract or look at a gas generating resource or build a storage asset, we're doing those things to ensure reliability, but also to hedge our membership. You know, it's a really interesting time, and we hear about costs. Cost is a huge issue for a lot of Americans. It's a tough time economically. A lot of people are struggling. We still see inflation coming. There's been a lot of impacts in the supply chain and the energy industry from tariffs at the federal level. We've seen the cost of resources across the board, whether it's gas, wind, solar storage, creep up for the last 5 years. So, you know, we are grateful as a cooperative to have benefited from federal programs like the New Era Grant Program that's administered by the USDA RUS. GRE was the largest awardee of that program. 2 years ago, we received over $800 million in grant money to help us develop new clean energy resources. So those types of financial mechanisms, the discussions that we have with our members, help us inform our path a little bit better. And we'll be filing an integrated resource plan, an IRP, like PJ mentioned, here in the next 3 months at the state level. And we're going through public meetings right now. We had one last night. We've got 2 more the next couple of days to talk with community members about what's important to them. And we want to hear from our members, from electricity consumers that our members serve as we build our portfolio.
I want to get back to what consumers want, but first I'm going to go to Deputy Commissioner Wyckoff. This is complex. And I think one of the things we at the advisory try to figure out is how to navigate these complex issues, A, for clients, but B, for the public and other folks. There's tension, and I don't mean that as a negative. I mean, between land resources, PJ brings up the USDA and investment. There's land resources of, do we use farmland for solar? Do we, make sure that the ag communities and the ag infrastructure and economy stays strong? How does the state look at balancing the broader economy of the state, and where does energy kind of fit into, what it is that Minnesota needs to really, really be clear about, for PJ's point, about what consumers want and what we need?
So I think there's a lot to unpack
Yep.
in what you just said there. So it wasn't one coherent question.
Nope, exactly.
So I'll take it where I want to go. How about that?
That's the way this works. That's the way this works.
To one thing you said, where does energy fit into the Minnesota economy? Energy is the base of the Minnesota economy in many ways. Ag likes to say that too. We all got to eat, but every part of our economy, runs on energy at some level. And the first thing we want to do is say, is it running as efficiently? Is it doing what it is doing with the lowest possible cost? And the first and foremost way to reduce costs is to say, we're doing this more efficiently. We're doing the same thing. We're not using as much energy. We're not paying as much. We need to focus on affordability. I think when people hear that, they say, okay, so let's forget other things. Let's not focus on the climate. Let's not focus on whatever. The good news is those things are not in conflict, and they won't be in conflict. And if they are in conflict, we will find better ways to get to our goals. I think an important thing to point out is we've already mentioned the IRP process a couple times. It was mentioned it goes out 15 years. Excel's the first one to hit the 15 years. What's the magic year 15 years from now? 2040. That's the year we're going to be at 100% clean. And we are starting to get longer distance plans that are both affordable and hit the state targets. So we will, of course, monitor that and say, is this something that, because of unforeseen changes in this or that, we need to address? I mean, we don't fix it and forget it with a 15-year plan, but we're coming up with 15-year plans from our major utilities now that get us to that endpoint, which is exciting. There's a lot that still needs to be worked out. Those IRPs are more are more detailed in the what happens in the next 5 years than what happens in the next 15. And that is important because 15 years ago, you wouldn't have known what technologies exactly were the perfect mix for hitting the low cost, hit your reliability marks, hit your cleanliness marks system. So it will be flexible. We're not just going to say, in the last year of the Walz administration, we're going to fix the trajectory of the energy system, and everybody just forget it. You don't even need an energy department because we took care of it. Of course, you're going to need that because things will come up and things will change.
PJ, since you guys operate as Excel in many states, Zach brought up consumers, and energy, as I mentioned in the open, is on consumers' minds. I get options. I can pick my energy from certain places. I can have efficiency and conservation options in my home. What is it that you see consumers asking for? Is it all about price, or is it about some decisions about they want their energy cleaner too?
Great question. I think it's certainly a mix. I think affordability probably is number one. The rates, the customer bill, that is extremely important to the majority of our customers. There's definitely a lot of customers who are clamoring for clean energy as well. I think that's why we have a lot of programs. We have Renewable Connect in all of our states. We have a new Capacity Connect program that we've initiated in Minnesota. Obviously have a lot of energy efficiency offerings. We have one of the largest community solar garden programs in the nation in Minnesota. So feel like we have a lot of options for customers. I know we have our customer and energy delivery team. They're working on, products every day, thinking about ways that we can offer more in terms of load flexibility to customers. I think that's going to be a key. We have new technologies that we're looking to implement in the next few years with DERMS. It's a distributed energy resource management system. That's going to allow us to have greater visibility into our distribution system, see our customers. We've installed a number of AMI, advanced metering infrastructure. So we now have better visibility into exactly what our customers are doing, what their load profiles look like, and thinking about, how do we work with them to better shape those profiles and therefore influence our load forecast in such a way that we can maybe avoid some generation capacity or avoid some transmission or distribution spend. So that gets back to affordability. We need to be making sure that we spend every dollar in the most optimal manner for customers so that we're keeping rates down. And just quickly on rates and affordability, I think one thing we certainly want to acknowledge, like there is going to be pressure. There is pressure now, and there's going to be pressure in the coming years with rates. We have a number of rate cases kind of in front of all of our various states in the north right now. We are facing pressure. A lot of our key resource inputs, prices have skyrocketed. Copper prices are way up. Transformer costs are way up. We don't control those. We don't manufacture those. We buy those from manufacturers. So I think that's another key that we need to highlight is some of the rate increases that might be coming in the future, and tariffs is another. There's a lot of external factors that are influencing our supply chain, influencing our resource inputs that we don't necessarily control that are driving up our costs. So certainly we want to be held accountable for decisions we're making that might be influencing customer costs. We're doing everything we can to suppress those, but there are certain segments that are not necessarily under our control.
I know one topic that is getting more national attention. Public opinion has certainly shifted on nuclear over the last few years. And I know it's going to be a theme throughout the panels. What's your organization's current view on how quickly we should look at new technology in nuclear? And when we get to UP, what's the state's view on how we should look at nuclear as future capacity? We'll start with you, Zach.
Well, nuclear is extraordinarily interesting. It's really the only source of base load, high capacity, carbon-free generation right now. Xcel has a number of very valuable nuclear resources, two of which are in the state. When we talk about nuclear, we obviously need to think about state policies. Right now, we cannot build new nuclear in the state. We're going to get to that throughout the day, I'm sure.
We are.
But when we think about the actual assets themselves, they are extraordinarily compelling. GRE has NDAs in place and commercial relationships in place with a number of small modular reactor nuclear companies. We work with folks like TerraPower, NuScale, X Energy. We have regular meetings with them and attend a lot of discussions to monitor and track what's happening. The capital costs of new small modular reactors are still very high. And so when you look at how we evaluate resources based on cost competitiveness, the overnight cost of a new asset on a dollar per kW basis. Today, they're still not competitive, but that doesn't mean they won't be. And we are seeing already some private partnerships with data center developers. You've seen headlines about Meta that's developing on-site nuclear. This administration federally is focusing on nuclear as well. So the catalysts are there to be able to get these resources in the ground and begin demonstrating how they operate and hopefully scaling those as well. And with that is going to come efficiencies and more effective supply chains to help bring those resource costs down that will help us to become a little bit more cost competitive. Because really, when you think about what is nuclear competing against, it's competing against other capacity resources. And that is gas, combined cycle, combustion turbine, and energy storage.
PJ, you do have a couple assets in the state. You obviously are probably looking 15, 20, 30 years. These aren't going to be built overnight. What's the Excel's current view on ways in which we can be prepared should the nuclear moratorium lift in Minnesota?
Sure. We have had a number of discussions about it internally. We obviously have 2 existing nuclear plants, Monticello and Prairie Island. Both were extended to the 2050s in recent resource plans. I was actually the resource planning director for NSP and participating in the integrated resource plan where we proposed that and got it accepted. So really happy about that. Again, it keeps a 24/7 kind of baseload carbon-free resource on the system out through the 2050s. Actually having discussions with some of our nuclear team right now, looking at a possible upgrade at Prairie Island. We upgraded Monticello historically, so might be some opportunity there. They're kind of looking into that and exploring that, and that might come into a future proceeding. But certainly with new nuclear, same situation that Zach mentioned. We've talked to a number of the different nuclear providers out there. Actually had a relationship at one point with NuScale, where they had a project that they were developing out in Utah, and we had an agreement with them where we would be operator and could kind of therefore see how that project was developed, monitor progress, kind of assess the technology, and potentially look to deploy it on our systems at some point later on. So I think we're a huge proponent of nuclear, especially with some of the data center additions that are possibly coming. Those are high load factor customers, 90%-ish load factor. Nuclear is a 90% capacity factor resource that's carbon free. That's a perfect match if you can match those up. And then you don't have to worry about a distributed portfolio of wind, solar, CTs, all serving a very concentrated load in a specific location, and some of the transmission costs that might create in order to deliver that power to that load as well. So I think it's a great potential. I think the challenge is the cost, risk. We've seen what happens with Vogtle, like Southern Company project was way over cost from original budget. The schedule was way off. So cost risk, schedule risk, those are 2 things we're very concerned about. And then just the development timeline is very difficult and onerous and takes some time. Permitting, getting through federal licensing, all of that. Our teams have been looking at, how can we expedite it? How can we remove some risk and start taking some step forward? But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I think lastly, community acceptance is another huge component. Had some discussions with some folks at the DOC recently, and that's huge very high on their list. Is we need to make sure that we're doing some siting studies, figuring out where there is community acceptance. I think community acceptance is improving. Was reviewing the Nat Bullard kind of recent slide dump that he does annually, and there was a slide in there showing that nuclear acceptance over the last 5 years is kind of at its highest level that we've seen in that time frame. So hopeful that we can make progress there, but there certainly are challenges and timeline issues.
Pete, as we wrap, how does the department look at this? Obviously, this isn't going to happen overnight, but are there things that we can do to prepare should the moratorium be lifted and community acceptance be what it needs to be?
So I think those are very important. I'll get to the governor's stance in a second. I want to respond to one thing he just said, which I think points to the challenge as well. He said nuclear has a 90% capacity factor, which is true. It is on when it's on. Then it comes off for a long period of time to refuel traditional nuclear. So it's gone. So I don't know a data center that's really going to put up with 10% of the time my power source is not available. So I think when we think we have easy answers to things, look a little deeper and there isn't. That being said, the nuclear units we have are extremely important for the carbon goals we have, and they're just great, reliable assets. We probably need more nuclear. The governor has said he is interested in lifting the moratorium with the caveat that there are issues of community acceptance. There are issues about how we established nuclear in Minnesota. We have a Prairie Island, a community that did not ask for and has been forced to live with a nuclear plant for a long time. So there's issues with community acceptance, and there are issues long-term with waste. There are environmental issues with every technology. That all being said, if we lift the moratorium, that does not mean we will get nuclear. It means we might get nuclear. We might get new nuclear that is better at doing some things that the old nuclear is. I am old enough to remember when baseload used to be a pejorative. It was not something you would brag about. It was something that meant you were an asset that was always had to be on and always had to be going full blast. There's nothing flexible about you. You're kind of useless to the system beyond what you provide. And I think baseload still has that problem. New nuclear may not have that problem, but the assets we need to be clean and firm and dispatchable. They need to ramp and follow load. I think the new nuclear plants may be able to do that. Whether they can do that in a cost competitive way remains to be seen. So I think that's going to be the challenge for, as you said, gas can do that. Gas is a great thing to pair with wind and solar, but gas is dirty. So do we do carbon capture on that gas? Do we do some sort of clean gas like hydrogen, green hydrogen? Do we do long duration storage? Do we do new nuclear? The options aren't that many, and they all have work to do to bend the cost curve to get to clean, dispatchable, not base load, because base load kind of sucks, but useful assets. And I think nuclear may be there, but we'll see.
Sounds great. Zach Krasicki, Pete Wyckoff, PJ Martin, thanks for joining us at this Fluence Forum. To our viewers and listeners online, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Good morning. My name is Drew Christensen. Excited to be here with a great panel and what should be a follow-up to what has been a number of great discussions this morning. So I'll start out by telling you a little bit about the panel that we have this morning. These are all Minnesotans, so they're pretty humble. So I'll read through their bios because otherwise they'll understate it. But I could do myself because as a recovering politician, I'm very comfortable with bragging. So like I said, my name is Drew Christensen. I'm Senior Director of Public Engagement at Apex Clean Energy, a utility scale wind and solar developer and owner operator based out of Charlottesville, Virginia, with a regional office right here in Minnesota. I've been with Apex for about 7 years. And prior to that, I did 2 terms as a state legislator in the Minnesota House of Representatives, representing my hometown of Savage, where I still live with my wife, Kayla, and 3 young, rambunctious boys. Next, we have Kari Grohl-Swan, who's Executive Director of the Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority. Kari joined the authority as Executive Director in November of 2024. Kari directs all operations and financial management for MNCFA, including projects for the Board of Directors to consider financing. Kari brings comprehensive wealth management and banking experience in the broker-dealer, asset management, private bank, family office, nonprofit, and CDFI sectors. Prior to joining the authority, she was head of investor relations for Treehouse Management and served in leadership positions for the Metropolitan Economic Development Association, Greater Twin Cities United Way, and St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. Kari has 20+ years of experience in the wealth management and banking sector, including JP Morgan, BMO Harris, Morgan Stanley, and Piper Sandler. Kari, would you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on this panel. I, as Drew said, I'm an executive director of the Minnesota Climate Investment Finance Authority. That is quite a word salad, so we go by MNCFA. We were established in 2023 as a new state agency. We were set up as a green financing authority to fund commercial and industrial clean, renewable, and energy projects. We are a different state agency in the sense that we do not offer any grants. We are basically set up similar to a commercial bank where we provide loans and we expect that money to be repaid, which then allows us to go back and do it again and again. The difference is from a traditional bank is we also have statutory responsibilities. We are called to embrace equity. We are called to finance projects all across the state. We are called to partner with a wide variety of stakeholders. And most importantly, in this environment, we're called to really crowd in other private investment because my budget that I have, and frankly, the state's budget, can't do it alone.
Great, thank you. Next, we have John Marshall, who's the Regional Vice President for Community Relations and Foundation at Xcel Energy. John and his team manage strategic relationships across 3 states in 700 communities served by Xcel Energy, playing critical roles in the area of operations, energy policy, emergency response, social investments, economic development, and business retention and expansion. John?
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks, Drew. Thanks for having us this morning. Xcel Energy, as many folks may know, vertically integrated energy utility. We serve portions of 8 states in our upper Midwest footprint. We've been serving for well over 100 years here in Minnesota, the Dakotas, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Sell gas, electricity, partner with large customers and seeing just a lot of emerging growth and work very closely with our communities. As you noted, many hundreds of communities across this footprint, really important to work closely with them.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Greg Mast, who's Executive Director of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. He has over 2 decades of professional experience in project development, resource analysis, feasibility, and financial analysis, and fuel risk management in the clean energy sector. He possesses deep expertise in the economic, marketing, financial, environmental, and policy aspects of clean energy. Greg has served as Vice President of the Biobusiness Alliance of Minnesota, where he was responsible for developing a long-term strategic direction for Minnesota in the areas of renewable energy and renewable materials. Early on in his career, Greg worked in a variety of corporate finance and management capacities, including at Allianz and Target. Greg received a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Minnesota, go Gophers, and an MBA in finance from the Opus College of Business at the University of St. Thomas. He resides in Minneapolis with his wife, daughter, and mini golden doodle. Tell us about Clean Energy Economy Minnesota.
Thank you so much, Drew. Great to be part of this panel. Go Gophers, row the boat, Skyuma. So Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, we're also known as SEAM. We are an industry-led, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary here in 2026. So 10 years of impact. We launched publicly in 2016, and we provide a unified voice for energy efficiency and clean energy businesses across the state. We work to elevate a business case to accelerate the transition to clean, affordable energy.
Great. Well, this panel is about the future of energy, and I'm excited about the conversation of the future of energy because it's an exciting future filled with challenges, but also opportunities. We're living through fascinating times that are really without precedent in really, I think, any of our energy careers. For a long time, the big word in energy was transition, the clean energy transition. Near and dear to me as a wind and solar guy, transitioning from fossil fuels to primarily renewable energy. Transition was the right word because we were shifting sources within an energy landscape that had relatively flat demand. Now, the demand curve has turned sharply upwards. The rise of data centers and reshoring of manufacturing is driving significant load growth, both in Minnesota and nationally. Simple supply and demand, if generation doesn't increase, electricity prices will rise as they already are. In this new paradigm, is transition still the right word? Who wants to start?
I'm happy to chime in.
John.
Fair question. I think it's you laid out a lot of facts of I think of what everybody is looking at in the industry, a significant amount of growth, the likes of which we really haven't seen once in a generation. I think transition is perhaps still the right word, but in parallel, build out, right? I mean, we are absolutely entering once in a generation build out phase, certainly for our industry, for everybody up here on the panel and really the state of Minnesota and really the country. If you look at it that way, the demand curve is significant and exciting. It's a great opportunity for us to capture that and step up. In prior panels, we talked about a lot of this growth and how we're working very closely with specific sectors. Obviously, the data center sector is really driving and leading a lot of that. It's important to get agreements right with those data centers and really leverage the opportunities of the excess capacity we have in the upper Midwest. If we get those agreements done right and get that growth out, we could probably see some significant benefits for our existing customers, try to help mitigate some of those cost pressures going forward. You mentioned on-site manufacturing. That is absolutely a big piece of that as well. There's a lot more manufacturing increase in those sectors, as well as electrification across the board. Working with a lot of our larger customers here in Minnesota in particular, there's significant interest in active projects in electrification that we wouldn't have seen in prior years. So I think transition for sure, especially as we continue to talk about that priority of clean energy transition, but it is a build out phase and we'll probably see that for a couple of decades here to come.
Yeah, Kari.
Yeah, I would totally concur with that. We use the word deploy. That's what we're here to do, is deploy and get commercial and industrial projects funded. I don't care whether you call it deploy, transition, or generation. We need in our state, at the federal, state, and local level, energy needs to be consistent and stable. It needs to be affordable, and more it needs to be clean and renewable, and it needs to be locally dispersed and locally owned. I think one of the interesting things that we have looked at as a green bank are other states as examples. And Texas has offered us a really great example. There was a massive storm that went through there in 2021. Hundreds of people died. Texas looked for a solution that was going to be affordable, reliable, and fast. And they didn't turn to gas. They didn't turn to coal. They actually turned to solar and storage. It was able to get on the grid quickly. It was able to be decentralized. And it is now providing reliable and affordable clean energy across the state. I think that's a great example of a transition and deployment.
Absolutely. Greg.
I definitely would stay with that theme. I think for so many that are working in the energy space, we've talked a lot about energy transition. And I think early on, that was the thought around how are we going to completely substitute or replace traditional fossil fuels with renewables and clean energy resources. And I think what's actually happened in the market as it's continued to grow and to develop, it's much more of energy addition. And I think that that's a term that a lot of us are using. I think that it is something that is very applicable to what has happened in the market, where renewables and clean energy, we are supplementing what has been the traditional forms of energy. Ultimately, I think where we want to go is to have full and complete energy system transformation. And I think that that is all about decarbonization. It is around harnessing the technological opportunities that are in front of us, but it's also delivering the many benefits that I think so many people agree on. And I think that that is not only unleashing jobs and economic opportunity, but it's also about delivering environmental benefits, but also social benefits, so that folks are seeing themselves benefiting from this transformation of the energy system.
Yeah, absolutely. As we engage in this transition and build out, as you all put it, I think it's increasingly an opportunity as somebody who works in wind and solar for us to continue to prove our economic case for those technologies as part of the mix in this grid build out. I think there's people often ask at a panel like this, or whether it's a panel like this or a public hearing for a project in Greater Minnesota, people ask, what kind of people want to talk about what kind of energy do we need, and it's always oftentimes viewed through something of a partisan lens or from folks' own biases. They want to say wind and solar, or they want to say coal and gas, and my answer always is more. That's what we need, is in terms of energy, is we need more.
Can I add something?
Yes.
The I in MNCFA stands for innovation. And what we are really doing is we're looking at innovations on two fronts. We're looking at it on how we finance these projects by taking advantage of the tax credits, by crowding in the private sector, by playing a part in the capital stack. And we are investing across technology on an agnostic basis. One of the most interesting projects we funded recently was CARBA, which was a very small loan. For us, it was $500,000 loan, 5-year terms, but it's really taking a new innovation with bio-woody mass and changing it into a carbon neutral technology. And that our $500,000 then allowed them to go and secure another $6 million in private equity to build out the other 2 reactors that we weren't financing. So I think when we think about this transition and we talk about this in all of these words, it's really nice to put projects to the face of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, thank you. What a great story about being able to push that innovation through kind of just giving it a little nudge, and now it's going.
Drew, could I also just add
Yeah.
a little bit too? As far as when we think about this transformation that is occurring and all the progress that we're making as a state here in Minnesota, as we're discussing kind of the state of energy and the future of energy, where we're going, I think it's really important to think about the fact that over the last 5 years, for 5 consecutive years, carbon-free energy has provided the majority of Minnesota's power. And so today, 33% of electricity is coming directly from renewables, 20% is coming from nuclear energy. And again, that is low cost, it's reliable, and it's providing stability for the energy system. At the same time, we're also decreasing carbon emissions. And because of the trajectory where as coal is phasing out due to economics primarily, that's also where renewables is filling that place in the portfolio. But we're also seeing that greenhouse gas emissions are decreasing faster than the national average. And so in Minnesota over the last decade, we've decreased carbon emissions 52%, whereas a nation, it's at 38%. And so I want Minnesotans to know and feel good about the fact that we are leading this transformation of the energy system.
I chime in and just echo.
Yeah.
I fully agree with Kari and Greg's last comments here. It can't lose sight of innovation. It's an integral part as we're moving forward to chase this growth, chase this build out, and really deliver for the incoming demand that's coming. As Greg notes, very important to highlight our success as a state for renewables. Excel's played a key role in that. Many others have, but significant carbon reductions, very significant. I think the running theme that everybody can agree on is the number one priority is reliability. And so as we're looking towards transitioning into the significant opportunity for the next 20 years, reliability, safe delivery of energy is top. Absolutely affordability as well, and baked in there, continuing with this clean energy transition.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with Kari for our next question. Given MISO's high risk for capacity shortfalls, how will Minnesota ensure grid stability and meet baseload needs as coal plants retire and demand increases, especially during extreme weather events?
Yeah. I think there's a lot more people that can probably talk about MISO and whether their numbers are accurate and what they're doing. I do know that MISO compared to other systems around the state is very reliable. Going to the comment around what do we need to do for extreme weather and natural disasters? That is something that we are thinking long and hard about at MNCFA. I think every community in the state would benefit from having a renewable energy resiliency hub. And the reason for that is because when there are extreme weather events, when there are power outages, people need a place to go. People need a place to go where they can charge their phones, charge their medical devices, seek shelter and safety. And they need, and these resiliency hubs are usually pairing solar with storage. And they are efficient, they are reliable, they are also affordable. One of the things that's interesting is I sit on the climate action framework with a lot of the other senior leaders at other agencies around the state. Dr. Pete Wyckoff serves on that with me. CAF, the Climate Action Framework, is going to be releasing their new report, and they are choosing one of the projects that we funded in North Minneapolis to have that event at. It's sponsored by, or we gave a loan to Renewable Energy Partners. It's 4 buildings on schools in North Minneapolis, and it is truly demonstrating how a resiliency hub is important in that community. And I know that right now, in times of social stress, it is also proven to be a place where the community can gather. So it serves multiple resiliency hubs, serve multiple social determinants, and that's another example of a great project that MNCFA has funded for affordability, reliability, and community service.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. We'll save John for last. That's who we're all waiting to hear from on this one. But you gotta have a cliffhanger. Yeah.
I think when we think about reliability, certainly for our organization and so many other partners that are here in the room and viewing online, I think it's definitely a big focus on transmission. And so where and how we continue to have a swift build out of transmission, we know that that is going to help with the reliability of our system, but it also is going to, again, provide a lot of different benefits along the way. And so MISO Tranche 2.1, that is a really big portfolio of transmission projects across the MISO footprint here in the upper northern region. And here in Minnesota, that means we're going to have approximately $4 billion invested here in Minnesota to build out transmission. That's more than 4,000 construction jobs that are going to be a part of that activity, and then certainly the ongoing economic benefits from that initial investment. And I think across MISO, this $21 billion investment to modernize our transmission infrastructure, that's anywhere from 2 to 4 times the actual total benefits over the course of the next 20, 30 years. And so that's really substantial, where again, it's going to benefit everyone that is here in the MISO footprint, and helping to bolster and ensure that the system is not only modern, but that it is safe, it's reliable, and continuing to be stable. So I think that the transmission piece is essential that we stay laser focused on.
Thanks, Greg. John.
Very much agree with Greg on the priority for transmission. You mentioned the extreme weather events in Kari. Had talked about Texas a few years back, terrible winter storm Uri. People died. It was a bad situation to say the very least. Xcel Energy, very proud with our track record. We rolled through Winter Storm Uri, didn't lose a single customer. All the way stretched up through the Midwest. We did not lose a customer through Winter Storm Uri on the electric side. Others did. We planned very methodically for very tough weather events. Opportune that we're sitting here today on the precipice of yet another polar vortex. I think we all remember the vortex from just a few years ago. And thinking of Commissioner Wyckoff's comment at the prior panel, having that firm dispatchable is an integrated piece of the total portfolio that you have to deliver energy is so important. Base load, 25% of our carbon-free electricity is nuclear. You absolutely need that. You have to have firm dispatchable on the systems for those deep weather events that happen for small chunks of the year. Not to always run, but you need that firm dispatchable to roll through those very difficult times, and we're on the precipice of one today. We have a track record at Xcel of planning significantly, not just for the events themselves. I should call out the crews that do amazing work reacting to the storms when they happen, whether they're deep cold or hot summer or floods in Mankato or significant reactions that we're just seeing a lot of weather events the last few years. We have tremendous crews that respond quickly, safely, get the power back on quickly. We know our customers rely on that. But from a planning standpoint, when we look at the integrated system, and PJ mentioned this in the prior panel, we look out with complex and comprehensive modeling to ensure that we do have a reliable generation base, a reliable transmission, what investments need to be made, and then work very closely with our partners to try to make those investments and get those built out to ensure to not only meet the existing customers that we have, but the demand that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, thanks, John. And is it true that, on the precipice, when you have these polar vortex events, that Excel has the community relations team running on wheels in the headquarters to generate just, to keep things going?
Very much. I appreciate you bringing that up. We've got a great team of community relations managers. They own close relationships with all of our close cities, communities. Most of them grew up in that area. Large customer teams that work with and know very closely all the key relationships in our largest customers who are relying on reliable energy as we head into these big storm events. We know that there's negative weather coming, and we plan weeks ahead of time, make sure we have infrastructure and storage, make sure the trucks are rolled in. We can rely on our utility partners across the Midwest, across the country for mutual aid to bring them in for major storms and get customers put back on significantly. We've seen a lot of events like this. For 100 years, we've been planning for inclement weather, to put it lightly, and I think we're very, very good at responding, and we're prepared for a future where we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a much better. I was picturing a hamster wheel in the Minneapolis headquarters that you had folks on, but that's a much better answer than my joke. John, maybe we'll turn it right back to you and then go through the other two with this question. And how do utility integrated resource plans balance renewable growth with cost containment?
Yeah. Well, again, we utilize our integrated resource planning. It is a kind of a low cost, least cost modeling endeavor that we partake in. As PJ mentioned, it can look out 30 years. Traditionally, it's a 15-year outlook. We are working through integrated resource plans now basically every 2 years. It takes a lot of partnership with the Department of Commerce, partnership with our regulators, our legislators, our communities, to ensure that we have a comprehensive plan here going forward to deliver the needs that we see coming up. Our current plans call for significant investment in more renewables, more firm dispatchable, more transmission, long-term duration storage, more solar and storage in our communities. We've got a new program proposed out there called Capacity Connect, very exciting, kind of first in the country endeavor to get storage out in our distribution network and really avoid some larger distribution investments. So it's a pretty complex endeavor that we partake in every 2 years. Don't do it alone. It takes a lot of partners, but feel very good about where we're heading in our investments to deliver what our customers need.
Yeah, thanks. Kari?
Sure. So a year ago, when I started the job, I had one admin and a board of directors appointed by the governor. A year later, I have a staff of 10 with 2 open positions, and we have deployed and approved $30 million in loans. And that is because we have done a huge amount of stakeholder engagement. Thanks to Greg Mass and a lot of people in the room, I think I'm over subscribed on webinars and all that, but it's really critical because the people that know us the most are the people in the metro area, but we are called to do projects on a statewide basis. We are called to go where people and the money don't necessarily always go. So now that I have these thought leaders as staff, we are tweaking our strategic plan. We are issuing a call for projects this February to really place an emphasis on rural and greater Minnesota. We are talking to stakeholders every day, and we want to hear from projects in local communities that can be funded. The other thing that I have learned in the past year on the job is that our communities pay very close attention to what they need in their community for their own point of reference. Local generation is really important. Serving community needs are really important. So we are working very specifically with specific cities that have collaborative leadership and great climate plans to make sure that we are going to where we can fund these projects. And lastly, the partner that we need to crowd in the most and that I think about all the time, in essence, operating a bank, is who are the private financiers that can help us, be it other state agencies, philanthropy, insurance companies, traditional banks. Infrastructure is expensive, even at the CNI level that I participate. And we're going to need a lot more money to make sure that this transition and this deployment happens quickly. The other thing that I would like to say is I'm not doing this alone. I've got this great board of governors that has been Herculean in their work. And I'm also part of what's called the Green Bank 50. There are only 7 states in the country that do not have some sort of green finance authority. And that allows me to rely on resources, to take best practices and bring them back to our fledgling organization. It allows us templates that can help us with our underwriting standards. So we are really benefiting from a lot of thought leaders that have come before us and helping Minnesota set up the Climate Innovation Finance Authority in a much more faster way than would have occurred, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point about outreach to greater Minnesota and to areas where really almost all of the growth in Minnesota's energy today is happening in greater Minnesota, not in the metro area. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about working in energy and wind and solar and in community engagement, is getting to talk about the economic development that these projects bring to areas with declining population and sometimes fewer job opportunities, and really being able to provide a boost to those communities, and even thinking about how renewable energy really does represent Minnesota first. We're not mining any coal in Minnesota, and we're not drilling for natural gas in Minnesota because we don't have any. But we do have a lot of wind, and we do increasingly with more efficient solar panels have a lot of sunshine. So I think it's exciting how this transition and this build out is transitioning and bringing on more resources that directly benefit Minnesotans in a way that more traditional past fuels really did not.
It's really amazing when you look at these small commercial industrial projects, the energy savings that they can capture, whether it's a small business or a school, the energy savings that they're capturing goes right back into programming or hiring more people at their local restaurant or hiring the band teacher at the school. That's a key KPI that we track, is the energy savings. We're tracking the affordability. And then of course, we're also tracking the overall effects on climate change and deployment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Greg.
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I think our utility is just a big shout out. I mean, they are nation leading as we're navigating this transformation of the energy system and the energy transition. Just outstanding partners, and just serving all kinds of not only residents but the businesses, et cetera. So just outstanding job. I would definitely say too, as everyone's moving towards this carbon-free future, it's not just a carbon-free future, it is an affordable energy future. And I think that's been a theme from the earlier panel, and I'm sure it will continue throughout this morning's discussions. But I think affordability is so important. And again, to ensure that folks are engaging and seeing the benefit at the end of the day in their pocketbook and the bottom line. And I think that, to John's point, there's been a myriad of technologies that have been deployed to help make this progress as a state when it comes to clean, reliable, affordable. And I think that continued innovation is going to be really key for Minnesota to achieve our laws, but also to maintain that affordability. One of the things also that I just wanted to mention that Kari had brought up too, let's not sleep on the critical role energy efficiency plays, demand response, all of this as utilities. Again, Minnesota ranks #1 in the Midwest when it comes to our energy efficiency programs. That's something that all Minnesotans should be really proud of because, again, the cleanest and cheapest kilowatt hour is the one that you don't have to produce. And so, again, I think keeping an eye on energy efficiency, that critical role that it plays, and where and how we can ensure that folks are not only saving energy, but saving money, I think that everyone can rally around that.
Absolutely. Especially now that we have the nice warm light LEDs, Greg. I mean, you finally brought me in on energy efficiency when we got those. Well, for our last question, because I'm getting the 5 minutes. What are the biggest no regrets investments that Minnesota can make now to build a secure, reliable, and resilient power system for the next decade and beyond? And really, maybe I'll extend it because 2040 is a big date, but the next 10 to 15 years as we head towards 2040. And I'll start with Greg.
Sure. I'll take the first swing. I think that some of the big no regrets decisions And where we can have Minnesota's leaders really focus in is where and how are we going to build durable industries, because energy is such a linchpin that's going to position us to be globally competitive, economically competitive. So there's a number of folks in this room that are online that are working in emerging industries. So as we think about industrial decarbonization, I think that that is a huge opportunity area that is going to help increase our competitiveness when it comes to manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We also know that we have tremendous opportunities to continue to be a leader in green iron and potential green steel production here in the state. We also are a big agriculture state. Where and how can we harness innovation, whether it's through clean hydrogen or other pathways to really deliver on green ammonia that is going to be really beneficial for all kinds of different reasons. And so I think that there's additional opportunities for us where, again, these are no regrets. How do we maintain and continue to advance our leadership in the areas of sustainable aviation fuel? I think that's another one where Minnesota is just really well positioned. And I would just say lastly, I know that Chair Frantz is in the room here. Thank you, Chair Frantz, for your leadership on supporting Minnesota Energy Alley. And that is a really unique partnership between Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, Grid Catalyst, and also the Department of Commerce, where we are looking at, oftentimes you'll hear utilities and others working in the energy space say, hey, we think that we know that we can get to 100% clean by 2040. It's just that last 10% that is really going to be a challenge. The legislature has invested in the Minnesota Energy Alley program to, again, support the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the startups who are working on those really difficult problems to solve with technology approaches. And so we want to grow a vibrant innovation and startup business community here in Minnesota that has really attracted a whole lot of, I think, attention to Minnesota as a hotbed for energy innovation, as well as we've been very successful with a very modest investment by the state legislature. We've been able to significantly leverage private capital, outside capital, to, again, to continue to nurture and grow these technologies that is ultimately going to benefit Minnesotans and also help us to achieve our 2040 carbon-free law. So just, again, many things that are being done, continue to encourage people to engage and to support these types of efforts.
Greg, as a follow-up, because I think it's interesting for the audience and those who might be listening, can you talk a little bit more about hydrogen, and the kind of the different forms of hydrogen? We talk about green hydrogen, natural hydrogen. Talk a little bit more about the opportunities that Minnesota might have with hydrogen in terms of, ammonia and intersections with agriculture, as well as heavy manufacturing.
Absolutely. So I think, and I'll be very brief. I know we're almost at time and want to give our other panelists an opportunity to also share a perspective. But I think, again, with shifting administrations, oftentimes, I think the focus had been in the prior federal administration on green hydrogen. Well, that continues to be in focus and in play. We're also looking at other ways that we can get to hydrogen, whether that's through pathways that are natural gas, reforming other types of feedstocks. So I think that the application space is many, intermediate or final applications of different energy sources. And so I think Minnesota, again, is so well positioned to take advantage of the different types of products that could be produced from hydrogen. And we also have one of SEAM's members is Cummins, and one of their business units, Accelera. They have the large hydrogen electrolyzer manufacturing line that they made a massive investment here in Fridley, Minnesota, right in our backyards, to help to lead this continued transformation. And so I think that that's also something that is really exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure, you talk about what's my number one priority in my mind as I think about our company and all the assets of the business. It's tough to pick one. I mean, our natural gas business is important, day like today, for our homes and businesses, and just from a life and health and safety standpoint. Think about our generation fleet, whether it's nuclear and again, having the existing fleet out into the 2050s, the significant investments in renewables coming down the pipeline, long duration storage, our distribution system and all the investments needed there. Probably top of mind, what comes up is really transmission in my mind. I think as we talk about what's going to set us up for the next 50 years in this region, not just the state, the significant amount of transmission investments that are going to help the nation, let alone this region, are important. We're being mindful about that, trying to really leverage the interconnection rights that we have at both our Sherco coal plant that is sunsetting at the end of 30, as well as our King plant out in Oak Park Heights. reintegrating those interconnections to add renewables, add wind, solar, and some firm dispatchable, certainly on the Sherco line is very important. So transmission is top of mind for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Kari.
Yeah, I'll go back to my banker hat and my economic development hat. I think when we look at the 30 million in projects that we have financed, only 2 of them did not take advantage of the investment tax credits. And investment tax credits still exist to finance projects. They still exist for solar. They exist for solar and storage and geothermal. So we're going to continue to fund projects that are taking advantage of those investment tax credits and getting these projects out the door. I think the second thing that Minnesota is no regrets is really going back to these resiliency hubs. I think these will help communities all across the state, bringing reliability and efficiency to them. And I would concur with Greg on the energy efficiency. That has been proven as the best way to save Minnesotans money over time, and we just need to continue doing more of that. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't say, because Pete Wyckoff usually says this, that I do think one of the no regrets is that Minnesota finally did set up a green financing authority. I am building a durable institution that is a state agency that is going to endure for decades. And we get a 6-to-1 ratio on the money that we lend out. And that is the flywheel that is going to put all of these small commercial and industrial projects all across the state. And it's just been a great honor to start leading this project.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. When I thought about this question, all I could think about was the tattoo, no regrets. And I tried to pitch Blois on a temporary tattoo, but he vetoed that. So next time, but I'll leave that image with you as we close. But thank you all for this discussion. I think it was really engaging on the future of energy in this state, in this country. So thank you for your time.
Good morning and welcome back. My name is John Burns. I'm with the law firm of Carnival Burns, and I'm going to be the moderator for our next panel, with the title of which is Policy Considerations for State Leaders. And with me, we have three experts in the area. First, Jim Pearson, who is Director of Regional Government Affairs for Xcel Energy. We also have Derek Moe, the President and CEO of the Minnesota Rural Electric Association, and Lucas Franco, who's the Research Manager of the Great Lakes Regional Organizing Committee for LIUNA in Minnesota and North Dakota. So we'll get right into it. My first question is for Jim. Tell us about the efforts that Xcel Energy has made in the last 12 months that you are most proud of, and what innovative ways have you served your customers?
Well, thank you, John, and thanks for allowing me to be part of this panel. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't often get asked what I'm most proud of, so I appreciate that opportunity. In thinking about that a little bit, I guess I would, kind of think about sort of our culture at Xcel Energy. I'm very proud of the fact that from the top down, our leadership and everybody really has sort of an openness, and we have sort of an innovative spirit. I think we touched on that in the previous conversation. So that innovative spirit at Xcel, which within an industry that's not necessarily known for that. So I'm pretty proud of that, and I think that translates then to our customers in a couple of ways. One, I think we are good at listening to our customers and what they want, which obviously that feeds. And I think about some of the things that we've done to give our customers some more choices about how they use energy, about their understanding of how we make the product that we deliver to them. And so I think about, whether that be around, some metering advancements that we've rolled out in Minnesota and across our 8 states. Those enable some technologies for customers to add on if they so choose. And I just think that we've done a much better job of giving our customers a better understanding about what we do, the complexity of our business, and giving them a voice in that. So as I think about some of the details with that, I do feel proud about our work.
Yeah, thank you. Next question is for Derek. What do co-ops mean for their communities, and how does the co-op model offer flexibility?
Yeah, thank you, John. Well, community and co-ops are words that, of course, go hand in hand. We have 85% of the land mass of the state that we serve, about a third of the customers in Minnesota. But that's between 50 co-ops that are scattered around the state, and they are governed by people that are locally elected within those local communities to govern those co-ops. And so they have quite a bit of flexibility, and they keep the focus on those folks that elect them in their local communities. How can they serve them best? And so affordability is an example. You are paying the electric bills, are elected to govern the co-op. Flexibilities have evolved in a way where we've been on the cutting edge of load control and reducing demand at critical periods over the last decades. In more recent decade, bringing in advanced metering systems is an area where we've had a lot of flexibility and been ahead of that. And then more recently, storage systems. We've been ahead of the game on trying to bring storage and energy storage to our communities and to help us manage the grid in a way that provides some additional flexibility. Data centers are a big example right now. Again, being able to explore the flexibility we have to make sure that those locally elected folks governing the enterprise could cite them in a way that protects the communities in the short term and advantages those same communities in the long term. So those are some examples of things where we've leaned on our flexibility. There's limits because we're certainly part of the big complex electrical grid. And so there's definitely limits to the flexibility that any of us have to operate in that environment.
because there's some big problems that require a lot of money often and usually to solve. So it's not like we're magic, but those are some of the examples of things that we've pursued with the flexibilities that co-ops have in their communities.
Yeah, thank you. Lucas, what kind of projects do LIUNA members work on in Minnesota, and why Minnesotans want more LIUNA workers in this state?
Well, good morning, John, and thank you, and thanks for those questions, and good morning, everyone here and online as well. So LIUNA, Minnesota, and North Dakota represents about 14,000 members, mostly in Minnesota, a handful in North Dakota as well. And our members work on a wide array of energy infrastructure projects and infrastructure projects in general, from wind farms in southwest Minnesota, solar farms across the state, the Can of Worms and other major bridge projects in Duluth, mines in the Iron Range, and then all kinds of gas and water distribution systems across the state. Really, our members build the infrastructure we need to heat our homes, to keep the lights on throughout the year, but especially in cold January days like we're experiencing now. Simply put, we build Minnesota's infrastructure, is what we say. So, and then in terms of the second question, why we should want more LIUNA workers in the state. So I could list a long list here, but I'll try to resist and keep it to two. First, our members are incredibly skilled, and I think folks, the trades are often a bit of a black box if you don't have family members or you don't experience it, to know that, you know, our members basically go to college to become journey workers. They do 288 hours of classroom work, generally over a 3-year period. They have 4,000 hours of supervised work in the field. So they're incredibly skilled, and they're ready to build projects safely, on time, on budget. And then second, our members are our neighbors. They're our friends. They live throughout the state. And when we invest in Minnesota, North Dakota, LIUNA members or other building trades partners, we're not only creating incredible jobs and pathways to career in the trades, but we're also ensuring that money that go into their wages is re-ejected into our local economy. And just very briefly, when I first started in 2018 with the laborers, a big focus of ours was making sure that wind farm projects in southwest Minnesota were being built by local workers that were eager for work opportunities. And at that time, about 80% of workers were non-local workers, folks from Texas and Utah. And we worked really hard in partnership with developers, utilities, to completely flip that to now every wind farm project in Minnesota is built by a majority local workers. And that's ensuring that not only is we creating good jobs, but also that their wages and benefits are being re-injected into local economies, supporting local gas stations, car dealerships, restaurants, et cetera. So it's really a win-win in terms of a good, reliable mix of energy infrastructure, but also creating phenomenal jobs for LIUNA members that are your friends and neighbors ultimately.
Yes. And probably can't say it enough, but these are really good paying jobs.
Yes. Yes.
And they're not the type of job that's going to be outsourced to AI.
Yes.
They're building things. And when we talk about AI, that brings up kind of the next question, and it's something Derek has already mentioned. And Lucas, I'm going to have you start with this question. The national expansion of data centers due to artificial intelligence and cloud computing was a top issue in the last legislative session. And the legislature did pass a data center bill in the June special session. Are there policy considerations that the legislature still needs to address regarding data centers?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So as you mentioned, last year, the legislature enacted nation-leading bipartisan legislation to protect customers and leverage data center development, which we're incredibly excited about ourselves and our other building trades brothers and sisters. So we see enormous potential to be a leader in the computing revolution and the AI revolution. So we've made enormous progress, but we've got to figure out permitting and ensuring that we simplify the process for companies that are trying to build it the right way, that we create a predictable and timely process, because we're very concerned, based on our current situation around permitting for these facilities, that we're going to lose out on an amazing opportunity, that these projects are going to go to our neighboring states or across the country, and we don't want to miss out. We can do it the right way here, powering these facilities with clean Minnesota energy, creating great jobs and being a leader in this space, but we need predictable, reliable permitting, and the legislature can play a key role in making sure that happens.
Same question to you, Derek.
Yeah, I think Lucas did a terrific job of articulating what the overall goal and posture should be and is and ought to continue to be. None of us here have made the decision that data centers ought to be built at all. It's something that society has decided to do. We ought to be in the best position to build them right here in Minnesota for the very reasons you just articulated. I think as co-ops look at the opportunity to sign these contracts, we again would look at that through a lens of how do we protect our existing members? How do we protect those that are already on the line? How do we make sure that in the long run, benefits are going to come back to those communities and not go somewhere else? And those authorities are already in place. And I think we want to be careful from a policy standpoint that we don't send data centers off to some other state where they're not going to be good for Minnesotans, and they're not going to probably be as good for the planet as a whole. So I think continuing to work in that environment and try to double down on where we're at is probably good policy at this point.
Thank you. And Jim, what does the legislature still need to do on data centers, if anything?
Yeah, I love this topic. We being everybody walking around the Capitol, worked on this issue a lot last year. And I think from our perspective, as I think about the 2026 session too, I guess my counsel would be let the dust settle. There were so many moving parts in that conversation, and what came out in the special session in June, I think, and Lucas alluded to it, was a bipartisan bill that had a lot in it. And I'm not sure we all really understand or have had the opportunity to maybe go back and look what's in that, because there are consumer protections, there's environmental guardrails in it, there's some tax policy in it, there's some water permitting issues in it. So it covered a lot. Now, through the course of one session and with a topic as large as that, you're probably not going to get it all right on the first swing. So I think we need some time to let the dust settle a little bit, see where we might need some tweaks along the way or some adjustments as we move forward. But I would counsel for 26, because of, like Derek said, this is from a utility perspective, we're not driving the bus here, we're the supporting cast. And so let's see how we roll out some of these policies and see where some updates might be necessary. But I would hope that we can, just let things settle so the industry starts to look at the state as a reliable, stable place to invest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to turn to a different issue that has been talked about a lot at the Capitol for years. And I'll ask this first to you, Derek. Minnesota currently has a moratorium on the consideration of new nuclear energy. Does it make sense to repeal this law and allow a discussion on nuclear energy? And who are the key stakeholders that need to be part of that discussion?
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense to do that. I appreciate the question. I appreciate that there's been some focus on this already this morning. I think it's a very important topic. I appreciate Chair Friends as well as Zinski in the House side, who's going to be here in the next panel with Senator Friends on working on this issue in the legislature in the last session. It has been there for quite a while, but it's really become a much more bipartisan push with a much broader recognition that enveloped in your question was stakeholders. I think a much broader recognition that the stakeholders are ultimately all of us. The stakeholders are the people of Minnesota who need to have a resource that's available under all conditions, under all weather conditions at night, and that is going to be available in a way that meets the carbon-free standard. That's part of the 2040 requirement. And there are other technologies that have been alluded to a little bit this morning that are maybe also potentials to do that. As a 35-year utility person, in my view, the one technology that we have that we know can achieve all of those things is nuclear energy. And so it's just not appropriate to have a moratorium on nuclear energy in the conditions we live in, and the stakeholders are all of us. Now, and I'll go one more level in terms of stakeholders. One of the reasons I think this has gained some momentum is there's a coalition of folks. Excel articulated that they believe that nuclear energy is important to our future. LIUNA is part of this coalition. So we have labor groups, we have environmental groups, we have utilities that are working together. I think at last count, we're up to something like 60 organizations on a very bipartisan basis saying that this is an important thing to the future of our state. And so, we're going to continue to work on this important priority for our future in the next legislative session.
Yeah. Jim, same question to you. Nukes.
Yeah, I concur with Derek. I mean, I think from my perspective, obviously it's a critical technology as we move forward into the future, for the reasons that were talked about in the first panel as well. And, I think, thinking about that conversation, they hit on really important points. I think the emphasis that I would like to give is that this conversation is more than just what we're having as utilities as a sector. It is a statewide issue, and it's going to require statewide political leadership along with utility and other stakeholders. They talked about community acceptance in the first panel. They talked about some of the work that is going on. So from my perspective, what's really useful about the conversation is the ability to really do some level setting about where we are. Because as it was talked about earlier today, it's not right around the corner, but it is in our future. And so I think we really need to, and you guys have done a great job in having this conversation broaden out beyond the utility industry and incorporate our communities and our political leaders as well.
Yeah, thank you. Lucas, nuclear
Yeah,
energy.
I'll just echo what has been said from a LIUNA perspective. Absolutely, we think that nuclear energy, it is now, but should continue to be as we expand, be a key part of our energy portfolio to ensure that reliable, affordable energy production and clean, of course, clean energy. And I just want to highlight a few key points, putting my research hat on. So there was a recent report by North Star Policy Action that I thought illustrated that both the need for nuclear as part of our energy portfolio and also helped to do some myth busting, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around nuclear. So just 3 quick points. The first is that the status quo isn't going to work to meet our 2040 goals. A recent analysis shows that the current pace of energy infrastructure construction will need to double to meet those goals, and that's not even taking into account additional load that'll be brought on. So what we're doing now is not ultimately going to work without bringing on something like nuclear energy to our portfolio. Second, we've seen this growing embrace of nuclear energy at the federal level, both from the Biden administration previously, as well as from Republican legislators at the national level. And a lot of states as well have embraced it, but we are still stuck here in Minnesota as a holdout, resisting resisting nuclear energy and exploring its potential. And then the third is just that nuclear energy offers immense possibilities for our energy system in terms of the climate benefits, the incredible worker benefits. We have members that have spent their career at nuclear facilities. They're great jobs. They do it safely. And then the last part to your question about stakeholders, so completely agree with what folks have said. The other component I think I would add is sort of academia, in the sense that I think we need rigorous peer-reviewed research to do the myth busting, to understand that there's a lot of misconceptions out there and a lot of unjustified fears around nuclear energy. And the more we can study nuclear energy and really understand its potential, the better we'll be as a state, the more competitive we'll be. So bringing in that research component, I think, is really critical.
Yeah. I'm going to turn now to a different topic, and Jim, I'll ask this question to you first. The big, beautiful bill made significant cuts to federal wind and solar subsidies. However, geothermal incentives were not targeted by the Trump administration. Is there a role for Minnesota state policies to support geothermal energy?
Yeah, that is a different question. No, thank you, John. Yes, I would say yes, and I know that the legislature, as I think over the last three sessions, there really has been a great deal of legislative interest on geothermal and the technology. And we've seen, some, a lot of private capital deployed in this space. And I think, as we look at that, we're very interested in it, but it kind of comes back to some of the affordability issues. And so I think, as we look at the capital that we need to deploy sort of across the energy sector, all of these investments, and we touched on it even with nuclear, right? You deploy this when the modeling and market conditions and such, that eye on affordability has to be part of the conversation. And so I think the legislature's done a great job funding some studies, funding some pilots. I think that helps drive down the cost. But I know on some of the projects that I've had a personal connection to, some of those affordability questions are still out there. And so I think in the coming decade, we're going to continue to try to hack away at that and see what we can do on the affordability front too.
Yeah. Lucas, geothermal.
Yes, very excited about geothermal and the potential. I think it's absolutely, there's a key role for RDA funding, for example, around geothermal. And I just want to use this as an opportunity for a plug for our brothers and sisters at the Steam Fitters and Pipe Fitters Local 455. So their apprenticeship facility in St. Paul has an incredible geothermal system in the parking lot that heats and cools their facility. Installed in 2022, just a cutting edge geothermal model that I recently toured, cut their energy costs by 85%. So a great example of the affordability that can come with a geothermal project. So I just encourage folks to visit that facility if you have a chance, because you see the potential that we have for geothermal and how this can really work and how it can save a whole lot of money on your heating and cooling costs.
Yeah. Derek, geothermal.
Yeah, I think I start by trying to draw a little bit of a distinction or talk a little bit about individual residential commercial home use for this basic technology as compared to the larger scale, which I think probably the question was asking me to focus on the larger scale. But I would point out that same essentially similar technology is what we use in heat pumps. And, there's been a lot of good work done at the legislature and by the utilities across the state in the last few sessions. We reformed the energy efficiency bill and we now call it ECO. So we have the ability in policy to acknowledge and lean on the fact that heat pumps are a very efficient way to heat and cool residential space, commercial space. And so there's been some really good work done in that space. And in terms of innovation, again, there's a lot of advances being made. One of the challenges is that cold weather in Minnesota, I heard it could get cold here, can be a limit, but the more work that's being done in that space, the more some of those hurdles are being overcome. Now, in terms of grand scale geothermal for the electric grid, my own view is that's a lot harder. I think continuing to think about how to do research and development, continuing to keep it as one of the things that if there's further work done, it could be an economical way to tackle some of these problems. I think it's in that mix of things we need to keep trying to keep looking at on the horizon. But I would say that in my view, and particularly based on the geological formations in Minnesota, it's not like that's going to be the thing that if we put a few more dollars here and there, we're going to be okay because geothermal will provide it. That is not really the landscape as I see it.
Yeah. And for those who are really interested in carbon reduction, you also have another technology that is a winner.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to jump in, I think Derek made the key point, it's a technology that's got a lot of different use cases. And so we as utilities tend to think more from a system perspective, from a building owner, residential homeowner or something, that's a little different perspective. So I think that will inform a little bit about how we go about the conversation.
each of your organizations are very active at the Capitol and are important at the Capitol. So I'm going to turn to this coming session, which starts February 17th. In your opinion, what consensus items can pass the legislature? And we'll start with Lucas.
Well, I will put all my optimistic energy into this question. So first, obviously, a bonding bill. We all know that that has been a challenge in recent years. That should be an easy one to pass, that we need investment in our infrastructure all across the state. Communities are craving that investment. There should be a softball to hit out of the park was the metaphor I'm looking for. So bonding bill number one. In the hope and change category bucket with all my optimistic energy, I think continuing Minnesota's climate leadership by lifting our outdated nuclear moratorium. I think there is a growing bipartisan consensus. There's a growing involvement of stakeholders that it's time to move forward. It's time to innovate. And we have enormous possibility around investment in nuclear energy. So that's where I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's great to have optimism here. Jim, next. What could happen?
Sure.
Consensus.
Sure. Well, I obviously spent a lot of time in the energy space, so my perspective maybe is a little narrower than others. But energy is typically an area where we can find consensus. I think when you talk to lawmakers across the Capitol, there is consensus around the importance of reliability, the importance of affordability, and the importance of sustainability. Now, the differences start to get into some of the details of what does affordability mean or what does sustainability, all of that. So I think around the edges on those, we can move forward on some things. We're thinking about affordability measures. I know some others are as well. So I think about, this would be nibbling around the edges, maybe around some of the things that, might help reduce cost to customers. So I know a topic that comes up at the legislature most every year is the renewable development account, which is an account and something that's really grown over time that is funded by Xcel Energy customers. And so I think we've got some ideas around, perhaps some reform things there that could, again, they're not game changers on their own, but they would help on that measure. And the legislature has, worked on this topic a lot over the years. And so I think we're going to raise some ideas on that front. I'm not sure I quite share your optimism, but that, the nuclear moratorium, we expect a lot of conversation around it. And I think we're going to have, some other things that pop up that afford themselves to be, in play as we move toward May 18.
Sure. Yeah. Derek, what's your opinion? What consensus items can pass?
Yeah, well, I love the optimism. I think, as Lucas articulated, I do think nuclear energy is one that has a growing level of consensus, both at the legislature and across Minnesotans in general. And we certainly, one of the reasons that we're putting as much energy as we are into working on that issue is because of that growing level of consensus. And we're going to continue to stay focused on that and stay hopeful. I would say I have a lot of respect for people that go to the legislature, our legislators. I think those are folks that go and do that job because they want to help other people. And they're in an environment, have been really for a while, but this year will certainly be no exception. That's a very difficult environment to make progress on important issues. And so it's, we're going to remain optimistic as much as we can and hope that that good things can get done, but it's going to be a very difficult environment, I'd say.
Yes. And I just want to reflect something important that you said about the people who serve us in the legislature. This is an extremely difficult job, and it's gotten more so in the last years. And we have two people who will be on the next panel coming up who lead that effort and work really hard. Senator Frenz and Representative Swazinski. So they're in the room. This will be my last question. And I'm interested to maybe see what they think when it's their time to talk about the renewable development account. As Jim mentioned this is money collected from Xcel Energy ratepayers and it has a public purpose. And the legislature determines where the spending is going to be. And as I mentioned, 2 of the 3 people who will be leading those discussions are in the room and will be on the next panel. And there's a lot of room for innovation and really exciting technologies maybe to start or test. But it's also complicated. So are there consensus items for renewable development account spending that you see? And we'll start with Jim.
Consensus, you
Yeah.
threw me with that word. I'm not sure about that. I guess maybe on the next panel, we'll find out. I think from our perspective, because it does directly touch our customers, they're the ones funding this. But as you point out, the legislature is the one deciding how the appropriations are made. So I think our drive this session will be about doing some level setting. This has got a very important history, and it goes back to the legislature's decision in 1994 to allow Xcel Energy to store spent fuel on site in Monticello and in Red Wing. So I think it's important to remember that history and understand there's a lot of new faces. I'm not sure anybody is still around from 1994. Yeah. So I think understanding its history, and it is there to provide the company with an incentive to move the spent fuel as quickly as possible. I think that needs to be maintained and held on to. At the same time, when you look at some of the changes that were made, and I think about the early 2000s when the Monticello casks were assessed a fee that was not part of the 1994 conversations, but 10 years later, the legislature says, well, what about those casks up in Monticello? Maybe we should impose a fee there. There was a cap at one point of $16 million. Irrespective of how many casks were in those locations, we're not going to collect more than $16 million from Xcel Energy customers. That changed. So our transfer this year is $30 million. And so it's grown a lot. And I think that is an opportunity for some reflection. And I think we'll want to do some level setting, and I think we'll want to ask some questions about, is there a way to reduce, again, in the spirit of affordability, which I think will be the theme in 26, is there a way to make some moves around the edges here to help Xcel customers reduce the amount that they're contributing or funding? But that will be our role, and we'll have to see how that plays out. So that's why I say you kind of threw me at consensus.
Yes, well, and Xcel, of course, will be a very important part of that conversation, clearly. Derek, what are your thoughts on RDA?
Yeah, RDA really fundamentally is an Xcel customer issue. I've always found Jim to be thoughtful and articulate, and it's just been great being able to be here and listen to his thoughts on it.
Yep, that's what I expected you would say. And finally, Lucas, RDA.
Briefly, I'll echo what's been said and of course defer to others with greater expertise, I think, around RDA. But I would say in general, for LeUNA, we love this model. The fact that we have resources to be able to invest in innovation, to try things like geothermal, which is an area, to directly answer your question, where I do think there's a lot of potential for consensus, big emphasis there. We get to test out new technologies. We get to do proof of concept projects. And when we can prove that a new technology works, we can scale up. And we're just so thankful that we have that opportunity through the RDA to do some of that creative work and to continue to be a great innovator here in Minnesota in our energy system. So that's what I would say around RDA.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Jim. I think this has been a wonderful panel. I certainly learned quite a bit. And we're going to take a short break and be back with the legislator panel. So thank you.
Yeah. Good job.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Bordelon. I lead the lobby team for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and we're continuing energy discussion with two chairs of the energy committees. I'm happy to welcome Senator Nick Frenz, an attorney who lives in Mankato. He was first elected to the Minnesota Senate in 2016 and represents Senate District 18. Senator Frenz serves as the Assistant Majority Leader and Chair of the Energy, Utilities, Environment, and Climate Committee. And Representative Chris Swedzinski is a farmer and small business owner. He lives near Ghent, just northwest of Marshall, Minnesota. He was first elected to the House in 2010 and represents House District 15A. He serves as the co-chair of the Energy, Finance, and Policy Committee. Welcome. This is going to be fun. There's been some great discussions today, and we're going to keep going with that. I have a series of questions to ask you both. And the first, and I'll start with you, Senator Frenz, is, so there have been a number of conversations today about the current state and future of energy in Minnesota. You've both served in the legislature for years. So how has your perspective on energy in our state changed since you were first elected?
Well, first of all, Laura, thanks for moderating. It's good to be here. Thanks to Fluence for hosting. I think the big change we see is the need for the public-private partnership and the nexus of innovation. The affordability stuff is not new. I read some of my grandparents' stuff in the 1930s, worried about energy costs and electricity and all that. So I think Minnesota being an innovator in a lot of industries, not just energy, really opportunities for us. And I think that's changed. When I first got up to the Capitol, it seemed to me it was just lights go on when you flip the switch. Here's how much it costs. Thanks for coming. But I think there's opportunity. And obviously the work on climate change keeps being informed each year differently. I think most humans, this is our species, this is the one we got, they are interested in clean energy, but it has to be affordable and reliable. And if we don't bring the public with us, and I mean the public, including everybody, the business community, the individual citizens, we're not going to achieve our climate goals. So on my side of the aisle, the DFL side, I tell my colleagues in the Senate caucus, these have to be policies that people can support. And a quick and shameless plug for the Senate DFL and the Senate Energy Committee as a whole is we passed an energy omnibus last session that had major bipartisan support. And although we did not get any of that across the finish line, looking forward to working with both parties in the House this session to see if we can make some progress.
Great. Representative Swedzinski, how has your perspective on energy changed since you started serving?
Well, I think, when I first started serving the legislature, we were talking about shrinking demand and lowering costs. And, that has drastically changed. I mean, just within the last 3 years, the conversation has switched dramatically when it comes to build out of infrastructure, the need for core materials, be copper and the rest, and generation. Data centers and the rest when it comes to demand is a growing aspect. They talk a lot about we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And the building here that we're sitting in, the Case building at 2550 University Avenue, quite frankly, is the first generation of industrial. In 1915, this building was built. They built cars in this building. And now we're talking about ideas. And really, that's what's happened in the last 15 years, is we're talking about what is the ending of the mechanical industrial revolution to now the digital industrial revolution and what that means. We're just spinning different things. Instead of spinning locomotives and metal lathes, we're now going to be talking about spinning disks and CPUs.
So let's look ahead to the next session. Very short session, 3 months. What do you want to try to get done, and what do you expect is going to get done? Do you want to start?
Sure, I can go first. We would really love to look at ways to just generally get the state legislature out of the way. There are many things that we could pass that would right now put money back into ratepayers' pockets, whether it be eliminating the RDA, the tax on nuclear cash storage, I think would make a big impact. If you look at what that fund will do over the next 10 years when it comes to ratepayers, $500 million or above that we will put in the pockets of ratepayers if we eliminate that simple program. And we talk about the innovation. The group before us talked a little bit about, hey, this is allowing us to do many things. Well, we just got the report back of unspent dollars that were spent in previous legislature through the RDA. One of them was the Blaine roof. And essentially, we are trying to rebuild a roof on a hockey arena so that they can put solar panels on it. And it's going to cost ratepayers in Excel territory $4 or $5 million to do that. And the money has sat there for 2 years and has not been spent. Would that money be better spent sitting there to build a roof? Is that innovation? No. But yet the dollars have been spent because the political powers at B spent them. And if I believe in the thousands and millions of ratepayers across the state will spend those dollars better, whether investing in their business, paying their bills, hiring employees, or absorbing the costs of other state mandates like earned sick and safe time, paid family leave. I think those dollars will be spent doing those things rather than what politicians in St. Paul want to do with them.
Senator Frentz, you want to weigh in on what you think, what you'd like to see done and what you think can get done?
Yeah, well, basically, we should just put the Senate omnibus bill back out there, pass it, and get out of there by about mid-March would be my pitch. I tend to agree the RDA needs a look. We're collecting this money from Minnesotans, and we're not doing anything with it. And Representative Swedzinski's nicer than me. We're sitting on $60 million right now. A fat lot of good it's doing, taking it out of people's pockets, those ratepayers you're talking about, and doing nothing with it. I think we can agree that's a whiff. I do love the clean energy projects, and I do love Minnesota's status as a major innovator, I think, for the business community. Like, that's something we're good at. So I like that. What we can do this session realistically depends a little bit on individual members of the legislature being willing to vote their districts and not their party. And having drawn your attention to the omnibus bill out of the Senate, 9-2 passed, there are legislators who have to ask themselves, am I taking this vote because my district wants me to, or because my party leadership tells me to? And I think the former is good leadership, good legislating. I think the latter is something we got to look at. With the House tied, we need members of the House to say, this is what my district wants. And I wouldn't be surprised if Representative Swedzinski's district's exactly the same as mine. If you focus on lowering the cost, we will like that. And the bill we passed last year out of the Senate would have saved ratepayers tens of millions of dollars, businesses too. I don't think the average Minnesotan knows the name of their state senator, and I'm not sure a lot of them care, but I think they're going to know if we say this bill will save money. We worked with MREA members as well as the investor-owned utilities, and I think there is room for progress this year. And I could imagine 75% of the stakeholders, including Greater Minnesota, saying, sorry, I just tapped my microphone. That's a good thing, right? Sure. And I think the public will make it hard for some legislators to vote against some of this stuff. It's no secret the Senate passed the nuclear study bill twice, last time unanimously. That means every Republican and every Democrat on our committees voted yes on the nuclear study. I talked with Prairie Island yesterday. We've worked with Excel to understand the issues. I think we'll have hearings on nuclear. I don't know that I'm optimistic we'll see big change, but I think we should do that study. That is low-hanging fruit.
Representative Swedzinski, do you want to weigh in on kind of the nuclear moratorium? Our state is one of the few, if not the only, I think, in the country that has a moratorium. What should Minnesota be doing on this issue?
Well, I think at minimum a study, but in reality, any technology that would be deployed does not get deployed next year, right? From a technological standpoint, from a development standpoint, nuclear plants are going to take years, if not decades, to do that. But the work starts today, right? If we understand what the energy needs are going to be in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, nuclear plays a big part in that, right? Whether you agree with climate goals or not, nuclear plays a big role in what the potential future looks like when it comes to energy generation and reliability and affordability. Nuclear isn't not the most efficient when it comes to cost, because it is expensive, but it is reliable. When you flip that switch on for a nuclear plant, it will run 24/7, 365 for the next 2 years until it gets refueled and re-upped. It is there. It is reliable and it is good and we need it. And so if we're going to participate in the fourth industrial revolution, it has to be part of the energy mix. And I think Minnesota simply just needs to get out of the way when it comes to saying no. If this is a question about nuclear storage, what are we doing if it's across the border in North Dakota? What are we doing when it comes to storage when it comes to South Dakota or Iowa or Wisconsin? Because I can tell you what, Canada is going to store their nuclear waste 90 miles north of our state border. And so when you're unwilling to participate in the conversation, you do not get to steer the ship other than say no. And so if we're actually if we're coming with an idea of what does the next step look like, it is not going to be storing it in Red Wing. It is not going to be storing more potentially in Monticello. It is what is the national conversation? And we can't have a conversation unless we're part of that development. And I think the first thing we need to do is get out of the way. Say, you know what? Minnesota is open for business. As long as it's safe, affordable, reliable, and right for ratepayers, then we need to participate. We can't have that conversation right now.
Yeah. What's the next step beyond the study, Senator Fluence? What's after that conversation? What happens next?
First of all, one of the reasons Minnesota has the moratorium is I would say, unique situation with the Prairie Island Indian community. In the 1970s, we said, look, we're going to build this. It's going to be fine. The waste is going to go to Nevada. And we presented that. You know, our relationship with the Native American tribes of Minnesota is a little touchy if you go back 150, 160 years. So some of us are not willing to break promises. Of course, this story includes in 1990s, we broke that promise. We said, Yucca Mountain's not going to happen. We're not going to store it. It's going to be right next to you. And I think that situation requires us to bring them with us. As some of you know, Prairie Island went to its leadership council last year to talk about the moratorium. They had some favorable feedback for the reasons that were mentioned on the previous panel. It's carbon free. So Native Americans are just as interested in climate goals as everyone else. When they went to their larger membership, a number of them recalled, I would guess the members over 50 years old, recalled the 1990s and how it felt in that community to hear the federal government basically say, I know here's what we told you and we built it here, but we're not going to do it. So I think we need Prairie Island and XL to be open to lifting the moratorium. And I think to do that, it's going to take more work on waste and probably some other discussions. I also, I want the 100% goal to be technology agnostic. I was a chief author of that bill. I don't know, we might need a ton of nuclear 25 years from now. And we have to keep that door open if we're going to continue to provide reliable, affordable energy. But it will take some cooperation. And these other states don't have this history like we have with Prairie Island.
Yeah. You had mentioned costs earlier, and I want to ask you a specific cost question, which is how do current and proposed energy policies affect businesses' operating costs? And what strategies ensure stable, competitive prices? Do you want to start, Representative Swedzinski?
Well, I think that's always part of the biggest part of the conversation as any project, whether it's transmission or generation, goes before the PUC. One of their considerations is, one, does it meet the 2040 goal, but also from a reliability and a cost-effective goal. And, oftentimes, we're told we have some of the most expensive industrial energy in the country. And if we're trying to grow jobs, if we're trying to grow opportunity, the places that we go to work need to be affordable and cost-effective to operate. And if we're trying to get industrial demand, if we're trying to get data center demand, if we're trying to get office center demand, we need to be competitive when it comes to those rates and affordability and reliability and safe. But, I think we do play a big part in that. And really the dynamics changed, right? So we went from a net, let's use 2% or 1.5% less energy each year goal to, I talked to my YMCA, and 10 years ago, they're using half the energy that they did 10 years ago, but their bill is twice as much. So are we winning the affordability run, right? And that's before we're having large data centers coming into the state. And we need to, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not innovating, you're falling behind. And so if Minnesota has been historically an innovator, a job creator, a great place to do business, a place where energy can be a great benefit because of its affordability and attractability to our state, then we need to continue that. But we also need to find ways that we can grow an economy, grow transmission, grow generation without destroying prime farmland across the state by utilizing new technology and getting new industries to come to our state.
Senator Fluence, what are we doing about costs?
Well, again, I think there's some things we can do that would lower costs right now. There's some ways we put costs on individual ratepayers. As we encourage some types of energy, we got to be careful to do it smartly. So those of you that have followed the debate in the Senate about community solar know that's one example. A great program to launch solar, now successfully launched. We have great businesses, but it's not fair to put those costs on the non-subscribing ratepayers. And whether it's net metering or some of our policies, if we're not attracting businesses, if we're not providing jobs, we're not going to have the tax base to do the things like education and healthcare that every Minnesotan wants us to do. I do think affordability is a fight that we're winning, that it's important to people, and elections matter. November 2024, I thought that was the main message voters across the country sent us. Can you please watch out for our pocketbooks? And I think I'm interested in that. I'm a business owner, as you may recall, Laura, and I also think we have to have the business community come with us. That's why I'm a little bit concerned about some of the employer mandates from the last two sessions, and hope to continue working with both sides of the aisle to see if we can do a little better.
Great. You have such an important role overseeing policy development on this issue in our state. So one of the advantages you have sitting in your chairs is you get to understand all the technical aspects of this. So what do you think is being done to modernize the grid to handle growing demand for everything from data centers, which you mentioned earlier, and prevent costly outages?
Well, what we're seeing, we're kind of at the beginning edges of transmission, right? And so we've got a couple, Xcel's got a couple of big lines moving in, whether it's from North Dakota or Southwest Minnesota, to replace the energy that's going to be lost when if the Becker plant is closed down ultimately. But that does cause problems, right? It's sending high line wires through people's yards and farms that aren't going to use that energy, don't want it necessarily in their backyard. And that's really the big question, is when it comes to transmission, when it comes to generation, or sometimes use, it's a not in my backyard mentality. Like, yeah, we want these goals, but we don't want them here. We don't see a lot of wind turbines being built in the metro. Why? Because they don't want them, right? And the same conversations happen in rural Minnesota too. We don't necessarily want to look at that, but it's sometimes decided at St. Paul or through the PUC without local control and without local input, whether or not those things even exist. And I think if you went yard by yard, farm by farm through Southwest Minnesota, in general, they don't want wind turbines. They don't want transmission lines. And so one person's goal and aspiration, one person's 2040 is one person's headache and one person's eyesore. And while those goals might be lofty, that is part of the conversation. And I think being smart in our development, right? So we understand that data centers or factories or whatever will be built. So where do we find areas in our country or state where we have curtailment? So if we have over energy, we have more energy than we can consume, where we're curtailing that stuff, maybe that's where we should be putting a data center. So if we're not currently using energy, we have wind turbines, we have gasification plants, we have coal plants that are being idled because we don't need it. So rather than build, what would you rather see? Would you rather see a fiber optic line run underground, or a gas line run underground, or a utility pole running through your front yard, or a wind tower in your front yard? I think we can be smart regionally on where we develop and where we put the end user, which would be the energy consumer, next to generation. And I think we need to be exceptionally wise with that. I think we can actually find those locations across our state and across the Midwest region. I mean, if you look at North Dakota, for example, North Dakota produces 6 times the energy than it consumes. 6 times, twice the electricity and 4 times the oil and gas. So does it make sense that data centers are going in North Dakota? Absolutely, right? So why would they export electrons when they can import jobs and opportunity and export data instead? I often liken that to 2 different things, right? So as a farmer, we're always trying to add value to the farm work that we do, right? So we take corn and we can just put that in a box and send it to China. Or we can take that corn, send it to a grinder, grind it, feed it to a pig, and export pork to China or to wherever in the globe, or we can turn that into an energy source and add value to it. Well, we can do that in our energy grid as well, right? So we can produce energy, we can see where there's excess energy. Instead of exporting electrons across state lines or jobs across state lines, we can export data and what the next spot is going to be. So Wayne Gretzky made his living by skating to where the puck is going. And I think Minnesota right now, by having a nuclear moratorium, by being flat-footed when it comes to business opportunity, is really skating to where the puck has been. And that's my fear when it comes to business development, job creators, and really being competitive when taxation. I mean, we are making Minnesota a very complex place to do business as a small business owner. I can't tell you how often I hear about the paid family leave program and how it's adding complexity to their business and how people just are having a tough time paying their electric bills, paying their rent. And now they're having percentages taking out of their, and just finding workers. 25,000 folks have already signed up for the program and are utilizing. Great. Some people view that as success, and I can tell you what, I've talked to many job creators that have said that has created a nightmare in my business. They don't know how to refill those jobs. How does this work? And so if we're concerned about digitization of our economy and the jobs that we'll take, then we need to make it a little less difficult to have people doing the job rather than a robot flipping burgers.
Senator Frantz, how do we modernize and optimize the grid?
Well, first of all, I have a lot of faith in the Public Utilities Commission. And so I agree with Representative Swedzinski. Nobody wants a transmission line in their backyard. That is a sort of not in my backyard phenomenon that we see in government, in this country over the last 100 years, going back to when they first electrified the nation. I think from a modernizing standpoint, I think we're actually making some real progress. We know more about resiliency than we did 10 years ago. I agree too. One of the things that's changed is we're now talking about the possibility of electric demand doubling in the next 20 to 25 years. They weren't saying that, when I was in college, and the efficiency work that Minnesota's done has been good. We have our federal government that has the ability to stand by some of the promises on transmission. It's no secret that we had a postponement, maybe a cancellation of $454 million in transmission. We're still going to build that. It's just our ratepayers are going to have to pay that. So we want a solid federal partner on energy. And I think we're open to new technology, so we'll modernize where appropriate. I love the reference to curtailment because here we are where we live in southern Minnesota. We got a bunch of wind energy we could put in. There is a data center on the drawing board with Geronimo that will basically take advantage of the curtailed wind power. It'd be a huge win-win. And I don't want to get into data, or maybe we do want to get into data centers, but when we met with those folks, they said the county has a budget of $48 million per year. This data center would be 20 million additional. And if you know our counties, they're not wealthy. And so I hope we don't lose sight of the job creation, of the property tax issues. And I think transmission relates to that. You got to power that. Yep. And by the way, our data center bill does require the data centers to protect the ratepayers with some language that the PUC, I think, would enforce. So one of the concerns in other states they've had with data centers is my rates went way up. Minnesota seems positioned well, and those that worked on the bill deserve some credit for that.
Yeah. I want to get into data centers. It is such an opportunity for our state. So as policymakers, you're influencers. How should we talk to Minnesotans about the benefits of data centers? So it's not this big black box that's going to cost everybody money and eat up all the water that we have in the state. How do we change that conversation so people are more open to the benefits of this huge economic development opportunity? Senator Frantz, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, few topics in my 9 years and 1 month in the Senate have made it as hard as it seems to be to get the public to understand the data center situation. We had gathered in Mankato about 180 people that I spoke at. There were a lot of people in the room who did not know about the low-income weatherization money. They did not understand the property tax impacts. And once they heard them, they were much more open. I think water is a concern of most humans, and I think we're in a good place in Minnesota with the language we have now. We have nation-leading water reporting, and I tell people that's another one. They're like, what do you mean? I say, these companies have to report their water usage in a way they don't in any other industry in any other part of the country. I had someone yesterday suggest we should double the frequency of the reporting. So I think the more the public understands data centers, the better off we'll be. And I know my friends from LIUNA are here. You're talking about practically career-changing jobs, not just for LIUNA members, but IBEW. Go ask an electrician how they feel about data centers. Take a few minutes to listen to what they have to say. And I just don't understand why we ignore that aspect of it. And people say, well, they don't have a lot of jobs once they're up and running. Fair point, 60, 70 for a 1 million square foot data center. But they're still paying taxes, and that's still benefiting everybody in the county and in the state.
Representative Swedzinski, what do we do to encourage people to think about data centers in a more positive way?
Well, I think, just in general, it's okay to be skeptical, right? But it's also listen to the facts, right? Just as there's misinformation out there, it's a steep learning curve. And I like to tell anyone that does have questions on data centers and data center development is Google it, right? And that's really a joke, right? And so, what's driving that? right on there.
See where he
But
went with
really,
that.
that's the key, right? What is driving data center and data center demand, right? It's right here, right? We have a more powerful computer than was on the Apollo mission right in our pocket, right? We have more capability, we have better cameras and camera storage, right? Nobody cares about the photos that you took on 4th of July of the fireworks. But I can tell you there are billions upon billions of megabytes of data of 4th of July photos of that beautiful red and pink thing that no one will ever look at. And nobody's ever deleted it, right? So how do we balance public need, public demand, and reality, right, when it comes to development? And that's our job as policymakers, is to understand that we're not building data centers because we want to. We're building data centers and infrastructure because we need to, and demand, right? And so the misnomer is that these things are going to waste millions upon millions of gallons of water. Are they? Okay, what is the technology? Well, the technology in general that's being adopted by Applied Digital, by Meta and Google is what? Is closed loop systems, right? Closed loop systems essentially work like your car, like a radiator and an engine. The engine heats up the water and the radiator cools it down, right? The CPU heats up the water and the radiator / chiller cools it down. What makes the Midwest so dynamic when it comes to development? It's our cold weather, right? So if a data center can be built in North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, or Canada, what can it do? It does not have to use the chillers 200 to 220 days a year. What does that do? That saves about 50, for a million square foot facility, it saves about $50 to $60 million in energy costs by using ambient air temperature to do the work of cooling those CPUs down. And what does a 100,000 or a million square foot facility use when it comes to water? About 56,000 gallons. The average US home uses 75,000 gallons of water. So is this about water usage? Then we should control how long our kids or our daughter takes to shower. Would do more impact than it does to impact water regulation on data centers, right? And that's just the reality. But the public thinks that these things are going to burn through gazillions of gallons of water. And is taking it in one pipe in the river and then depositing it back in the river at 5 degrees different, actually using the water? You can count those gallons as water used, but are they gallons of water lost? Right? They're not, right? Because they're being brought in and exited, right? I think wasn't there just a warning talking about one of the coal plants that was being fired back up and the workers had to go out? I think there was in the King plant, maybe, or what, I forget which plant it was, but I just heard on the news that they were going out to talk to the ice fishermen that were out on the river to make sure that they understood that the plant was going to be fired up and that the water temperature was going to change and the ice conditions could change, so they can have a less of a reason to disappear and drink beer. I mean, catch fish. But I mean, that's the conversation that we need to have, and it's a long one, by golly. I mean, shoot, most legislators have barely got on board to understand what the technology is, and we're the folks that are making the decisions.
Right.
It's a completely different conversation when it comes to the general public, because there is so much doom and gloom. Like, and what is the problem? Are we concerned that AI is going to watch us and see what we do and what we like and what we dislike? Well, then throw it away, because I can guarantee you it's not AI tracking you, it's us tracking ourselves, right? Like when we go to Amazon, we decide, hey, you just got done picking out a new window or a shelf or a bookcase. You know what? If you buy a bookcase on Amazon, you know what they're going to try to do? Sell you books. Is that dangerous? Yeah, to some it might. Depends on what kind of books you're reading. But that's another conversation.
Senator French, did you want to make another
I
comment?
want to say, hopefully the point of the forum, share ideas, get people together. Really appreciate putting this on. At the end of the session last year, we had a little bit of a disconnect on data centers, and the tax bill appeared to come out of the leadership group without anything but bad news for data center purveyors. And Senator Ann Rest and I and one other senator who shall remain nameless, Leslie asked me about it later, then I'll tell you, said we weren't going to vote for it. And I think it's worth knowing that there are levers that people can pull to say, no, I'm not okay with that. And to come out of that session with assurances that we make a data center friendly state, and to do nothing but just remove an existing sales tax exemption was a bridge too far for Senator Rest, who of course chairs the Senate Tax Committee. And by saying that we wouldn't vote for it, basically sent them back in. And I would give the building trades a special pat on the back for that. We got a letter on May 16th, which said basically, you better get organized and pass this or we're never going to forget it. And it's funny how simple, straightforward talk often works with legislators. So glad that we were able to do that. And I'll tell Senator Rest I gave her a shout out.
Yeah, I would add to that. That was a really important bill that had a very scary beginning and a very happy ending. So thank you both for your work on it. It was really important for our state and took some heavy lifting. So we appreciate the folks in the room that helped with that as well. That was important. So I have one last question for you, which is and this is a big question. And I know you think about this a lot because you're obviously technically interested in this issue, but what is your vision for the future of energy in Minnesota, especially as we look past the current administration, both at the state level and the federal level? So long horizon question is, what is your vision for the future of energy? You want to start, Senator Fritz?
I do, and thanks. And thanks for hosting. I mean, thanks for coming here, everybody. Thanks to everybody online. My vision is that we're going to continue to drive clean energy based on cost. One of the things that's developed in the last few years is that wind unsubsidized is now the lowest cost. We got to put some of that on the grid. Our friends and neighbors want to have low cost energy. That is just a bedrock principle. And so that's my vision, is that we'll continue to encourage innovation. I really appreciate the talk on geothermal. It's got potential. It's just not got potential in every single corner of the state. So we got to keep looking at it. But the renewables cost is the key change. And my vision is that we'll meet our 2040 goals. We'll have lower costs, and people will say Minnesota's a leader in energy. And I really think we can do it.
Great. Representative Suslitsky.
You know, when it comes to vision, it's also, how do we, as 6 million people, navigate the interesting map of energy consumption and use, not only just regionally, but globally. And when we talk about coal, we can say what we like, but more coal will be burnt in 5 years than it is today, right? For every single gigawatt of coal that we get rid of in the United States, 3 or 4 get built globally. So when it comes to competitiveness and natural resource, one, if it's a natural resource protection thing, maybe we can have that conversation, but does that coal then just get loaded onto a boxcar and sent to the coast and then shipped across, right? Shipping issues are already an issue, right? The cheapest thing you can possibly do is send things back to China. Cheapest thing you can possibly do is send things back to India. Why? Is because the ships usually run empty. And so if we are going to be bringing jobs, industry, data centers, opportunity back to the United States from third world countries and developing nations, that will take an extreme amount of energy to do that. Whether that's exploration when it comes to oil, when it comes to coal, when it comes to steel. I mean, we have to mine more copper in the next 25 years than we've done in the last 500, right? If we're going to get rid of gas, propane, or natural gas furnaces in our houses, we're going to have to build 17 gigawatts of energy generation just to replace that in the state of Minnesota. So when someone says, hey, we're going to get rid of your gas furnace or that gas fireplace so I don't have to chop wood, we're going to have to build 17 gigawatts of generation. And that's not just intermittent, that's base load. So when reality versus talking points are a big change. And so when it comes to those things, the conversation is just starting.
Great. Thank you both. Such interesting responses. And thanks to Fluence for hosting this event today.
I just want to thank everyone. Laura, thank you for moderating this last panel. Senator Frentz, Representative Swedzinski, our sponsors, Excel, Great River Energy, SEAM, and Minnesota Rural Electric Association. Our next panel is likely to be on artificial intelligence and how it's impacting the economy and policy in Minnesota. I want to thank everybody. You can visit fluence-advisory.com to learn more about our next panel and to get a link to the podcast of this Fluence Forum. Thank you.
Nice job. Thank you, guys.